All right. We are live. Hello, everybody. Just waiting on Brian, who had to rush out for a second. I thought I'd go live, say hello. Shams is here in the chat saying how he's sweating the buffalo, but should be fine now. Okay, in this league, I made 2 streams late in the week just to, try to secure a matchup against Ben, actually. And they went so horribly wrong. I had a cardio game today from Wyatt Johnston from Dallas, who was on a bit of a run. And, I don't know, I figured and I saw that Dallas scored 5 goals in this game versus Minnesota, but he had a cardio game, no shots, no points. So that was a bummer. That sucked. Yesterday, I was choosing between it was for Friday. I was choosing between 2 goalies to stream, between David Riddick and Lankinen. And I chose very incorrectly. I took Riddick because the Winnipeg game, Winnipeg was the heavy favorite against Columbus, and this league gives a bit more points for wins than the couple. So I thought, might as well just go for the team that's predicted to win, as opposed to Nashville, I think, was the underdog, and whoever they were playing, maybe the Islanders. Anyway, went very terribly. Lankinen had a ton of points. Riddick, I think, got me negative, or maybe inched back to 0 points by the end of the day. So yeah, it kind of stinks. I had a stream spot with it, and now I'm tied in my matchup with just a couple games left, but I've got only Erik Karlsson and Patrick Kane, and Ben's got Peugeot, Barabanov, Parise, Beauvillier, and Dylan Larkin. So I'm gonna need Patrick Kane and Erik Karlsson to really go off here, but I'm gonna play. Yeah, Lankinen is my boy in another league, in my dynasty league. I should have gone with him. This year, I'm telling you, Andy and listeners, I'm trying my best to not ruin it for anyone. I don't want to let my stink get on you, but I'm making bad decisions. But I think they're only for my team. I think I'm actually giving good advice on the podcast. I'm going back and listening. I said smart things. I just didn't listen to my own advice. So don't worry. Even though I'm doing badly, I'm confident that. And also, Brian, whatever. I'm mostly throwing the questions to Brian, and he's giving his advice. But okay, we got a fun crew here all of a sudden. Brian and I were just talking about how I wonder if making this only a patron perk is now going to lead us to have no one to hang out with for these live shows. But no, look, we all of a sudden have a fun group here. That's what I wanted. I just wanted to hang with the patrons, not the GP and, all these who knows who these people are. And then they GP. And then they give us weird, ads for porn sites in the comments, so I just figured it would be nice to hang with the patrons. But of course, if no one was going to come, then it wouldn't be worth it. But here we go. We got a good crew here. Andy, Luca, Norm, Phil, Ashley.
Oh, my favorites.
Sam's, all the favorites. You would have said that no matter who it was. You're so phony with it. You need to it's nice the thought of how you're always so friendly to the patrons and talk about how much you like them, but it just comes off, at least to me. Maybe I shouldn't be spoiling, because maybe to them they don't realize. To me, it's so just so easy, they don't need to do anything except for be patrons, which I guess is fair. I mean, that is a pretty big thing that they do for us.
They support us. They let us live out our dream.
Thanks. Is this your dream?
Yeah.
I remember at one point you really wanted to get us on Ottawa radio. I thought that was your dream.
I was very close to it also.
I remember thinking even if we get on Ottawa radio, I just didn't see that as
well, it was the TSN affiliate in Ottawa. So the idea was start there, get syndicated across other TSN radio stations, maybe.
You never know.
But I remember telling the guy the station manager, he's what do you want? What do you want to do on radio? What's
fancy
the point?
Hockey.
And we're well, we have a pretty successful podcast. It feels like radio is the next step. And he looks at me and he's it might be the other way around, actually. And look, since we had that conversation, radio shows are becoming podcasts, and radio personalities have left their station or asked to leave their station, and then they're cut loose, and then they start their own podcast.
I guess the main reason I would have been excited to do something on the radio would be the sweet recording equipment. We'd probably get a cool booth. It would probably sound so amazing.
Right.
That would have been
going and do
that was my dream. But now actually microphones are better. I remember when we started the podcast, that was my biggest stress, is just I thought it sounded too crappy. But now it sounds okay. So that's good. But anyways, Brian, I guess you're here. You said good night to your family. You said I'm gone for the night. Don't bother me. It's podcast time.
Yeah.
So let's do this. You ready?
Let's do this. Yeah. What was did anything come of the discussion about, I seem to come in when are we going to go public again with these or?
Now, no. I was
No.
telling them how we were thinking about it, but now we got a crew. The only reason I wanted to go back to public was because no one was here. But that was just, I was being impatient. I just wait a minute. All right, but now let's keep them, Brian. We got to be entertaining here before they leave.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go.
True. Okay. I'm ready.
All right, I'm going to go.
Let's do it.
Yeah! Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who would be so happy to have 1 week without one of our major players on our fantasy teams getting injured for an extended period of time. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and with me is a fellow Chris Letang manager in the cupful. He is the fantasy hockey robot, the Pooh Bob prognostication, the IPP MVP. You know him well as also our good friend, Brian Colm. Hey, Brian.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everyone. Who needs caffeine when they've got you shouting in their ear with that big, enthusiastic intro? I am pumped for this episode tonight. I think we've got some really fun stuff to talk about. The Letang situation, not fun. Glad he's okay. Seems like he wants to play already, but let's be safe. Let's do this the right way. In the meantime,
who are you talking to?
I don't know. His doctors.
Are they listening? That'd be cool.
It's a scary moment, but I'm glad. I don't know. I don't know. I'm rambling. I just want.
You always have to say that. That's the thing with being on a fantasy podcast is like whenever there's an injury, before we like dive into what we actually care about, we have to obviously say like, oh, I hope he's okay. I want him to live a happy life with his family. I want him to blah blah blah. All right, now let's get into who's the top power play defenseman on Pittsburgh.
Jeff Petrie. Yeah, no, but also top power play defenseman in San Jose. By the way, I saw him last night in the flesh in Ottawa. Karlsson coming to town. He was so good. He looked really great. And I also confused a lot of people around me. I was wearing a Karlsson Sharks jersey, like in the away teal. And like, I've never been the person who wears the opposing team's jersey to the home team's arena. Like, that's not my thing. I don't love doing it. I don't like the attention it draws, but like Karlsson first, Sen second, the color teal third, the Sharks, like a distant fourth. And like, that's just, so people, I had questions.
Did you have to explain it to a lot of people?
From the people sitting behind me and the guy sitting next to me who like, I think thought I was visiting from San Jose. He's like, you ever seen Karlsson play before? Like, yeah, several times. And it's a lot of fun. And that's why I'm back here tonight. So I'm glad he didn't do that well. I was scouting Alex Barabanov. Looks pretty good.
I've got him on my cupful team, and he's become a hold. Like, I don't see why I'm going to drop him. I have a lot of people who suck more than him.
He's kind of exciting with the puck. Like he can make things happen. Maybe he's a little too, like he tries a little too hard and maybe a little too selfish. But of anyone with the puck in San Jose last night, he seemed like someone who could carry it through the neutral zone for a controlled entry. And he's got I was going to say great hair, but it's kind of thin. Like it's long, it's stringy. It covers like, a bit of his name on the back, but it's not like luscious or thick. It's just kind of like
this scouting report,
stringy flow. So that's my take on Alex Barabanov. Good on your cupful rosters. I'd like to see him on a good hair day.
Okay. Like, look, Brian goes to one hockey game and here we go. The whole podcast is different now. No more numbers. We're just going to give some eye test reports to you. But of course, no, we've got a ton to talk about. I got a ton of injuries, outjuries, then hot streaks and cold streaks. So no surprise here, but it felt like there was a lot of injuries and outjuries to start. So I think we got to get into it. But of course, before we do, a couple announcements. Keeping Karlsson, very proudly presented by DobberHockey.com. I freaking love that website. Okay. Frozen tools. I use it like all the time. Like if frozen tools went down, the podcast might need to go down for a week or it would take a hit because it has everything I need. It's the best. So check it out. You'll see what I'm talking about. So that's DobberHockey.com, frozentools.com. Also, Brian, we asked Ben and I love how Ben is like, when I was like messaging Ben and Lewis being like, hey, can you mention on the podcast that there might be some couple spots opening? I expected it to be kind of like a natural, like, oh, by the way, there's some couple spots. They were like, we have a message here, like, special news alert. We have a message from our overlords, Elon and Brian, that they've required us to make this announcement to the public. But anyways, yes. This is the month. December is like spring cleaning. I guess for fantasy hockey, it's December. Like it seems like the month when some people decide that their season's not going well. And of course, the true like fantasy players, the hardcore people, probably the people listening to this podcast are the type that even if they're losing, they're not going to give up. They're not going to stop setting their lineups. Not to shade anyone, but there are some people who decide that they are just going to give up and not set their lineups, maybe not even mention anything to anyone, because we actually don't mind. In the cupful, if you come to Brian or I or Kevin, and say like, hey, it's not going well. I think I've got too many leagues. My life is crazy. Whatever reason, I'm going to go. That's great. We're like, no problem. Thanks for letting us know. But of course, there are some people who just kind of just stop setting their lineups. And we don't want our league to be like that, where you have people that are playing against people where there's just like, no challenge because they're leaving Ovechkin on the bench or whatever. So Kevin's going to be doing some pruning this month, which means that we have some openings probably coming for the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. So if you want to jump in and get some practice in before you start with a fresh team next year, if you're not in the league, you go sign up. Couple.com, I guess, or become a patron, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Well, one of those ways will get you in and we'll explain to you everything you need to do. So Brian, anything you want to say on that or anything else before I get into our first injury of the day?
No, it's fun. It's fun. While you're waiting for the cupful, you're in our Discord community too. So get in, join us, and keep again, another perk of the cupful. We make sure everyone's active. It's 600 people in the league. We promise that over 95% and sometimes 100% are actively managing their teams. No, all killer, no filler.
Yeah. No pressure. All we ask is that you set your lineups and you put injured players in the IR and take healthy players outside of the IR in a reasonable way. We're not saying we're going to be watching you so carefully. You didn't make an ad drop this week. You're clearly not being active. No, we just want you to make it clear that you're somewhat paying attention. But anyways, okay, let's get to the show. And we're going to start with injuries. We're going to start in Vancouver, Brian. Thatcher Demko is out 6 weeks with a lower body injury he suffered versus Florida. Demko has stunk this year. So I think any Demko manager probably was just oh, phew. Obviously, first, hope he's healthy and going to live a healthy, happy life with his family, blah, 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 everything I said. But then I think the next thing they're thinking is I've been stressing about whether or not to drop this guy for the past few weeks, basically since the start of the season. Now I could just stash him in IR, not stress about it. I could finally go grab that goalie out of free agency that I've been eyeing that I didn't have room for. So I can't imagine anyone is too upset about this. This guy still only one game with less than 3 goals against all season. So hopefully he takes this time to heal this lower body injury and also to heal his brain and figure out where is the Thatcher Demko from last year that we grew to know and love so much. Anyways, maybe if you're doing very well in fantasy, maybe you time to trade for Thatcher Demko. If you are thinking that maybe he is, gonna find his old game, maybe you can give, assuming the price is peanuts, which I'd imagine it should be. Maybe now you trade for Demko, stash him in your IR. Maybe one day you'll be happy that you did. Either way, obviously we need to talk about the new guy that's going to be taking over. I'd imagine it's Spencer Martin, who's been the backup. It's already kind of challenging Demko for starts this season. He came in obviously on Saturday. It stopped 12 of 14 in relief in the 5-1 loss. He got the 3-2 win, or sorry, that was on Thursday. Then he got the 3-2 win on Saturday versus Arizona, stopping 21 of 23. Overall in the season, Spencer Martin's been decent, right? 901 save percentage, much better than Demko anyways. I feel like if a goalie's over 900, that's good because we've got a lot of goalies we're going to talk about that have been below 900. But anyways, also he has 7 wins in 11 games, so that's good. The backup that's been called up now is Colin Delia, who doesn't strike me as, you never know, but Delia doesn't strike me as someone that I'd be worried about him stealing starts. We're going to get to Washington in a bit. I feel like the guy coming up may actually challenge Charlie Lindgren for starts. I feel like, but what do I know? But I think Spencer Martin is probably going to be a volume goalie moving forward for these next 6 weeks or whatever it is that Demko is out. So of course, Brian, the question is, are we into him? Is Spencer Martin someone that we should be telling people to go rush and grab if you need a goalie, or is he just going to be terrible like Demko was?
He has not been terrible like Demko has been. And Demko himself said a few stinkers since we last talked of him. And remember my line, I was saying Demko's fine at 5-on-5. He's just getting crushed while shorthanded. Well, after his last few outings, Demko is now also doing poorly at 5-on-5. He did badly enough that he's now a fair deal below his expected number. Not a great deal, but a fair deal, and much more than we'd expect to ever see Thatcher Demko performing under his expected save percentage number. Spencer Martin, for his part, he's been playing at his expected save percentage. So you're seeing average NHL goaltending there, which is better than what Demko's providing, right? That's over and above what the Canucks have seen so far from their franchise goalie. And Martin's also doing pretty well shorthanded too. So he's playing well at 5-on-5, also without the pitfalls of Demko on the penalty kill. So I figure Spencer Martin is going to get some time in. We'll see how he holds up. With 11 appearances already this season, this is officially Spencer Martin's busiest NHL season ever. He's 27 years old. Last year, he got into 6 games. He started 6 times, 6 quality starts from Spencer Martin, right? Remember, we were talking about him, and it's one of the reasons why the Canucks felt comfortable moving on from Mikey DiPietro, thinking that, okay, we're gonna go with Demko and Martin. That's who we want. But last season for Spencer Martin was his first NHL action since age 21. When, of course, Elon, we all remember the 3 starts Spencer Martin had for Colorado. Yeah, they drafted him in 2016-17. Yeah, 3rd round, 63rd overall back in 2013. Just to bring you back there for context, that was the McKinnon Barkov 1-2 year. Goalies drafted that year, not a good year for goalies. Zach Fucal at 36, Tristan Jarry at 44. A guy I think I already forget his first name. Might have been Philippe Desrosiers at 54th. Eric Comrie, 59th, who still might be coming into his own. UC Saros, 99th overall.
Why are you saying this is not a good year for goalies? You're throwing out like a bunch of good goalies here.
Actually, yeah. Well, there were just a bunch of randoms, but there are always a bunch of randoms. Cal Peterson, 129th. Oof. And of course, Anthony Broder, drafted by New Jersey with the 4th last pick of the draft at 208th, just 2 spots after Mackenzie Weegar went, it figures. Anyway, I mean, we look at Comrie and Cal Peterson specifically, like Jarry and Saros have established themselves. Comrie and Peterson are establishing themselves. So there's still room for Spencer Martin to show he may be an NHL goalie, is what I take from this. He's had a long AHL career, about 175 games of experience in the minors. Nothing really stands out from his time there, but I guess Vancouver decided he was good enough to back up, which means he's good enough to start this year. Colin Delia doesn't seem like a threat, although he is a 904 career goalie over 4 seasons, or parts of 4 seasons with Chicago, spread out over 4 or 5 years. This year, the Rancho Cucamonga native, that's where Colin Delia was born, is an 884 save percentage in 8 games with Abbotsford of the AHL. So I feel like this is a situation where Vancouver would be very happy for Spencer Martin to run with it. Delia is not incapable of stepping in for a start every other game or once every 3 games if Martin isn't handling it. But we'll see if one of these guys, if I have faith that one of these guys, if I want to bet on one of these guys getting volume the rest of the way, it's obviously going to be the guy who already got the NHL job, which is Spencer Martin.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't expect the Rancho Cucamonga native to be a workaholic in net this season. Okay, by the way, last week we talked about Brock Besser and how he may be a good guy to sell on the 3rd line. Kind of a roller coaster since then. Like after that, he got promoted to a top line with Miller and Horvat. And I tweeted being like, okay, ignore what I said about Besser being on the 3rd line. Like this is a great spot for him. Then all of a sudden, a couple games later, he was threatened with a healthy scratch. It was kind of like a Kalen Addison situation from a couple of weeks ago. It was announced that Besser wasn't going to play. Then at the very last second, Dakota Joshua, who was going to be his replacement, he wasn't able to play. So Besser did play, and then he scored the goal. He scored a big goal, the game-tying goal in the 3rd, assisted by Elias Pettersson. So I guess he was back on a good line, at least for that part of the game. Also turned out it was Hockey Fights Cancer Night, which is close to Besser since his dad had that long battle with cancer. So it was probably like a special night for him. So great that he was able to get into the game and have this big night. Anyway, moving forward, who knows? Like, I don't know. I'm going to be watching the line combos in Vancouver. Is he going to be playing with Garland and Dries, or is he going to be playing with Pettersson, or is he going to be playing with Miller and Horvat? Like, I guess watch GameDayTweets.com to see. But in the meantime, like last week, Brian, you said Besser is definitely a guy you should sell because he was coming off a hot streak and maybe still had a lot of value, but we were worried about him getting bumped down the lineup. Is he still a sell, or now do we reset and say, okay, he scored this goal, maybe he learned his lesson. Now we get back to the Besser that we thought we were drafting.
Brock Besser is always a guy that you want to reset on anytime something goes well from him. You can't ever count the guy out. And as we were talking about on our Discord server earlier this week, how rare is it that we see the kind of fall from grace and inconsistency Besser has had? A 30-goal scorer, emerged in his sophomore season, looked like a world beater. Remember his 3rd season? It was like, oh yeah, he's put on weight. He's going to do even better this year. And he just has never been the same since that 2nd year in the league. And since then, he's just been going from doghouse to doghouse with different coaches now. And it's being healthy scratch too. This is it's almost reminding me of a Patrick Laine situation. And,
that's turned out well.
Yeah, in a new destination, right? And Alex Semin is another name that also comes to mind. I feel like
Always.
always Semin's always on my mind. And it's low hanging fruit for me to say that if Brock Besser was not like American or Canadian, he'd be labeled an enigma with the career we've seen from him so far. And so one thing that we noticed when we were talking about him on the Discord server, and I think someone shared a player card from Jay Fresh showing how his defense has just gone straight down the tubes, which is that's almost like weirder to me than your offense going, like, because the offense is like constantly harder as players get the book on you and figure out how to stop you, and maybe you're injured. So like, I have a lot of ways to explain a drop in offense, but Besser becoming just a defensive worse than a non-entity, just so damaging to his team and in such a drastic downfall, I can't really understand or explain it. So there's still a hill for him to climb, but maybe this is the start of that climb, but he's going to have to figure out the defensive aspect first. So keep an eye on his ice time, how his coach seems to be approaching him. And that's going to be a lot about how Brock Besser's season goes. But as I mentioned last week too, the offensive markers just aren't there or as exciting as they have been in the past either.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess since we'll just make this the Vancouver Canucks, so I do have a lot to get to. But I do want to mention one quick thing. I want to do a quick check-in on Quinn Hughes while we're here. He had 2 power play assists on Saturday. That brought him to no goals and 23 assists on the season in 21 games. Pretty rare to see a point per game player with no goals. But here we go. 90-point pace so far for Quinn Hughes. He also only has 1 hit. He's averaging 2 shots per game, which isn't that great. 2 blocks per game. That's not so bad. He's probably the player with like the most varying fantasy value, depending on your league settings. Like in a points only league, he's actually tied for 5th among D in total points. If the goals aren't worth more than assists, it's just straight up a point is a point. Brian, do you want to try to guess who are the 4 defensemen ahead of Quinn Hughes? It's a list that maybe we wouldn't have expected going into the year. That's for sure.
I can't even hit me with the list.
Well, you can name one. You saw him last night and you had a great time watching him do so well.
Yeah, Erik Karlsson.
I
could name a bunch of guys ahead of him, but I just.
So Nate, take another guess. There's 3 more ahead of him.
How about Sergachev?
Tied with him.
Okay. Pietrangelo?
No, behind.
Okay.
I don't know if this is fun. I don't know. Let me know when you want to stop. Burns.
That's my last guess. Is Brent Burns?
No, he's pretty far behind. Burns has 18 points. Quinn Hughes has 23, tied with Sergachev and Cale Makar. They also have 23 points.
Yeah.
That wasn't even one of the answers. The people ahead of him, Erik Karlsson leads the defenseman in points with 33. That's before today's game. Rasmus Dahlin also playing today. He's next with 28. Adam Fox, 27. And then, of course, Josh Morrissey.
Of course,
in
Josh
4th
Morrissey.
place.
Josh Norrisey.
25 points.
Yeah.
Josh Scorsey.
Scorsey. There's so many opportunities, but it's been a really great season that's how great a season it's been for Quinn Hughes, that of all the guys we would have expected to have a great one, he is delivering by staying in the top 5 of the group, right? One thing to mention about him is, remember going into the season, he had this plan to shoot more this year and it was going to make him
people saying that,
more dangerous in fantasy. I think he said it. That plan has not materialized. I love, by the way, that Quinn Hughes has 0 goals. I'd love to see him get 90 points with no goals, and by his career shooting percentage, Hughes should probably have a couple of goals by now, but he's still not shooting any more than he has in the past. But hey, that doesn't matter if he's on a 90-point pace with no goals. If your league counts assists, power play assists, he is golden, as always, for you and your fantasy team. And if Quinn Hughes is still, without being a big shooter, making any kind of significant peripheral contribution, a top 20 defenseman in the cupful, Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, kkupfl.com for more info. That's still pretty great. It's still really great for a guy who, like I said, doesn't do much except one thing, but really well.
I almost feel like it's a little bit patronizing, to be like, that's great. Good job, Quinn. You're in the top 20, like the top 5 defensemen in points. He's 17th right now in average points per game among D and couple, which just goes to show how, you really have to know your league settings when you're, that's why we get questions on Twitter sometimes. Like, should I take this player or this player? And it's like, if that's your league settings, it's kind of hard to say a lot of the time. Anyway, all right, next injury. All right, another goalie, Petr Mrazek, suffered a groin injury in Saturday's game versus the Rangers. This is Petr Mrazek, right? So I don't know if we've gotten an official announcement yet, but I'm going to predict he's going to be out a while. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out months. Okay. And Alex Stalock is out. I don't know when he's coming back. I also predict that he won't be back for a while. This is, again, just a gut feeling, knowing these goalies and their history.
We have a short update, thanks to Game Day tweets, that Mrazek's going to be at least a week, according to Luke Richardson.
At least a week, at most a career. But no, okay, good. Hopefully he'll be fine and he'll be back and able to play with his kids one day. But in the meantime, we've got Arvid Soderblom. That's our Spencer Martin in Chicago here. He's going to be your volume starter in Chicago. He stopped 5 of 6 in relief in the win over the Rangers yesterday. He's also having a pretty Spencer Martin-esque season, a bit over 900 save percentage, 904 save percentage on the season, though in wins department, not as much, only 2 wins on the year. So looking forward, it looks like, I'm guessing a month. Let's say that both of them, well, Martin, we already know is going to be at least 6 weeks. But I guess I should mention the backup, Jackson Stauber, someone who I've never heard of. He's been called up to be the backup in Chicago. So I think similar to Colin Delia, not someone I expect to, challenge and make it 50-50 unless things go really crazy. I'd imagine Soderblom is going to play a lot, just like Spencer Martin. So if you were choosing between the two, you need a goalie. This is your opportunity. People in fantasy who didn't get a good goalie and now they, or they just lost someone to injury. Here's your chance to get a volume starter on Vancouver or Chicago. Brian, are you interested in either of these guys? Like who would you take more?
It's a really good question. And I'm looking at who has played better defensively over the last month. And actually, Chicago and Vancouver are 30th and 31st in expected goals against per 60 minutes. Like it's not good at 5-on-5 for them. The only team worse than both of them, and by a long shot, by the way, sorry, John Gibson, it's your Anaheim Ducks who just hang you out to dry on a nightly basis. But Soderblom looks decent at 5-on-5. Lots of volume for him. I don't expect much different from Mrazek, but if anything, I would expect maybe a little better. Like this could be a good opportunity to grab a volume starter who may be able to withstand the attacks that the Chicago Crease faces night in, night out. Between him and Martin, Elon, it's probably a push. I might prefer Spencer Martin just because Vancouver seems to have more goal scoring capacity, but at the same time, like Soderblom has the higher pedigree, so I think it's pretty safe to say. And I would say that Jackson Stauber though is less of a threat even than Colin Delia. You may remember Jackson's dad, Rob. Does that name ring a bell, Elon?
A little. He was a goalie.
I can't tell if he played very little for the Kings as a backup goalie over a 16-year career, where he only played 62 NHL games. But Jackson, the actual player we're talking about, he put up good numbers for Providence in Hockey East Division 1 in collegiate hockey last season. Undrafted 23-year-old Stauber's an .892 in 6 AHL games so far as a pro. I don't see why he'd get into too many games unless Chicago is just hanging Soderblom out to dry all the time, in which case I wouldn't want Jackson Stauber either. So yeah, Soderblom or Martin, not big on Delia or Stauber. And I think I'll lean Martin over Soderblom. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'll go Spencer Martin, especially if your league counts wins. Not that the Canucks are amazing, but I think they'll still win more than Chicago. Though Chicago has some people getting points. I guess we should call out Patrick Kane. He just had a big game on Saturday, 1 goal and 2 assists. He's up to 20 points in 23 games. Obviously, this isn't a pace we expect to see from Patrick Kane, but nice to see he's not, doing terribly. We're looking at now around a 70-ish point pace. Do you think he gets to point per game for let's say he stays on Chicago the rest of the year? Do you think he gets to point per game, or do you think it's going to end up around this 70, 75? You don't need to dive deep into this. I'm just curious to get a gut check on Patrick Kane at this point.
Yeah, well, one thing that's going well for Kane is that the top power play unit is seeing a huge share of the power play time in Chicago lately. Basically 80% of the power play time on ice for Chicago is going to the top unit over the last couple of weeks. That's a bit of a change from earlier this season. That offsets the fact that Kane is seeing less time at 5-on-5 on average. I think, I think some shooting percentage regression could get Kane above a 71 point pace, but there's also so much working against him in Chicago. I think 80 would be possible and definitely a success for Patrick Kane, but I might try and sell high on this run he's on. I'd rather have someone stable and 75 plus, especially once Kane is dealt. I know you said if he's on Chicago, but if we assume he's dealt to a team where he plays a little less of a role, then I would definitely put him, closer to 70 or 75 than even 80.
I would have. I think most people are assuming that if he gets dealt, that's good news for him because he'll play with really awesome players.
Yeah,
He'll be
but
like a Claude
we've talked
Giroux.
about this before though. Like usually when you're a superstar and you get traded, you're not in the starring role
Yeah,
anymore because you go to a cup contending team that
but can
isn't
you really
adding the
say?
best piece on their roster.
Can you say usually when you're talking about like Patrick Kane? Like, this is a
Yeah.
real superstar. Like this is a
Yeah.
guy who could put a
The
team on his back. Like he'll wherever he gets traded, there's like a really good chance he becomes the best player on the team. You know, not
yeah,
just like a piece.
the only comp that I can think of offhand is Rick Nash when Columbus traded him, like at the height of his, capabilities. And he went, I don't even remember now. Was it to Boston? He was a non-factor though. After he
Sure.
was traded, it was really disappointing.
Yeah, I know Claude Giroux last year was really awesome in Florida. And so I don't know. I think that he'll be good. I think it would be good news for him to get traded. I'm hoping he does get traded. I did see like a news report that he was saying how he wants to maybe stay in Chicago to chase some like franchise records. It's like get out of here with that. Who cares? Go help my fantasy team somewhere else. But Brian thinks I'm better off with him staying here. I'll also mention Max Domi. By the way, Chicago's playing today. So, I don't have the Sunday results. I'm talking about these guys, but Max Domi, huge hot streak going into today. 2 goals and an assist versus the Rangers. 2 of them on the power play. 2 power play goals versus Edmonton in the 5-4 loss earlier this week. So Max Domi just cashing in on that power play that Brian was talking about. He's also had 5 shots in each of his last couple games. He was in free agency in my 2 main leagues, and he's been taken this week, and probably just because of the weekend schedule. But I think I may have lost my last chance to get him. Or maybe I'm wrong. Like, do you think that I'm going to be seeing Max Domi back in free agency sometime soon, or do you think this is it? I missed my chance to get this guy who's, actually having a really strong season over in Chicago.
I'd be really surprised if Domi is rostered the rest of the season. And if he's dropped, you probably won't be interested in him very much because he's dropped because this run has petered out. But he is on Max Domi on a legit run right now. A lot of sit-start decisions in our Discord server on Saturday where people were asking, comparing him to various different players. Should I sit him or start him? He was a fringe choice for a lot of people on a busy Saturday. And initially, the start of the day, I'm like, yeah, like probably not Max Domi, but I looked into him again before I answered any of the questions, and he's been doing really well lately. And I mostly advise start because one thing Domi's been doing is putting up shots, and that's something he's never really done over the course of his career. He's basically been in Quinn Hughes shooting territory for most of it, really. And Max Domi at 5-on-5 is basically on a second line, I guess, with Philip Kurashev and Taylor Radish, but is on the top power play unit. And that's where he's getting shots off, helping Domi to 4 power play goals on 10 total shots in his last 2 games. So I like Domi as a short-term guy to run out this hot streak with. Maybe someone you replace, if you're still hanging on to Velarde for some reason, or if you were still hanging on to him before, like Domi seems like a good replacement for someone who could do the same thing. But I think he won't keep on the 68-point pace for the rest of the season. I think there will be a time in the not so distant future where he's not even rosterable. So I wouldn't beat yourself up, Elon, for thinking you've lost a season-long hold candidate in Max Domi. But let's watch and see. If these shots continue, I might change my tune.
Yeah, okay. We'll have to bring him up again next week and see if you disagree. So you're saying if you have him, enjoy the ride, but don't go trading for him or anything crazy like that. But okay. Another goalie injury to talk about. Darcy Kemper left yesterday's game for Washington versus Calgary in the second. I saw a tweet being like, maybe it was a concussion spotter. But anyways, apparently Washington has called up this guy
Hunter Shepard.
Hunter Shepard, who is not Shepard. I'd never heard of him, of course, but
both names are occupations.
There's one cool
Hunter
thing about him.
Shepard, backup goalie.
I get it, but maybe is he the backup goalie? Because here's my question, or here's my observation. Hunter Shepard just won the AHL Goalie of the Month award for November.
Wow.
He's really been having an amazing season over in the AHL. I was seeing tweets saying that Hunter Shepard is the first Washington Capitals, I guess, what do you call it? Property, not rostered, but first Washington Capitals organization goalie to win that award since Braden Holtby, 10 years ago. So I don't know. All of a sudden now Darcy Kemper's injured. We don't know if it's serious or not, but the backup, this is not to me Chicago or Vancouver situation where I think that Soderblom and Spencer Martin are pretty decent and they're going to probably just play the game. Charlie Lindgren has not been very decent. He led in 2 goals on 9 shots in relief in the 5-2 loss to Calgary. He hasn't really lived up to those awesome 5 games in St. Louis last year. I was kind of surprised when Washington made Charlie Lindgren their backup, a guy who hasn't even been in the league for a while. So far on the season, 2-3-2 with an .890 save percentage in his 8 appearances. So I don't know. To me, Charlie Lindgren isn't that special. And we got this Hunter Shepherd, 2-occupation man here with coming off, the best streak of any goalie in the AHL last month. So I don't know. I think in the short term, I think this Hunter Shepherd might be someone to watch, but obviously this is just a hunch based on these things I've said. What do you think? You look very skeptical that there's going to be any. You think Charlie Lindgren's about to get a run of games if Kemper's out a while, right?
I mean, I think that would be Washington's first plan for the same reason I said about Spencer Martin. And it's a little different in Washington. Like, they signed Charlie Lindgren to a 3-year contract that's for $1.1 million a year, which is clearly like, hey, play backup for us for a few years and maybe push. But yeah, Lindgren's not really pushing very hard, even with the opportunity. He's never played a whole lot over the course of his career. 7 years since Lindgren broke into the league and has just played 37 games in that time. His busiest season was back in 2017-18, where he played 14 games with Montreal, where he looked good. And I remember initially discounting him, and then he started going off, and I was sad that I didn't have him on any of my rosters. Since then, Lindgren has looked both good and bad in limited action. I think there could be something here. Last season, Lindgren had goalie of the month type numbers playing with AHL Springfield, 925 save percentage in 34 games, played heavily on this Springfield team that lost in the Calder Cup finals in the AHL. Like, I'd give him a shot. If you want to know his pedigree, there isn't much of one. Undrafted, turns 29 years old in a couple weeks, which doesn't differentiate him so much from Hunter Shepherd, who is undrafted with and is just turned 27 a month ago. But this is the first taste of the NHL he's ever had. In fact, he played the majority of last season in the ECHL. But the thing with Hunter Shepherd is, I'm looking at his career numbers here, going back to his time in the National Collegiate Hockey Conference in Division I of college hockey. He's never had a bad number, like never. The lowest number I see at any level of hockey, aside from the very first, I'm going to ignore 2014-15. But since then, he's never had below a 917 save percentage, but he's also never played very much. So between college and the ECHL and the AHL, I don't know, this guy's these
give
are
him
like
a shot.
These are
give
like
him a
Igor
shot, Capitals.
Shesterkin KHL type numbers that I'm seeing. It's like he's never been bad. So yeah, I'm curious. I am legitimately curious to see what this guy can do. And the way Lindgren's going, I don't see why not give him a chance. By the way, fellow 2013 drafted Zach Fucal did not get the call up from Washington. Yeah. He's been an 895 as the presumptive starter in their AHL system, but has not been delivering.
No, it's Shepherd time. I'm looking at this AHL goalie of the month history. There's some name
who's in there?
Back. Okay, like back to 2019-20, because I want to get some goalies that now are like these are all goalies that are in the NHL
now. 30 months here, so yeah.
Well, if I tell you the goalies now in the past few months, you will obviously have not heard of them because they're AHL goalies. Yeah. But if we go back a couple years, okay, we're looking at Igor Shesterkin, Casey DeSmith, Oscar Danks, so that's someone who's not in the NHL, the Philip Gustafsson and Kaapo Kakkonen. So all NHL goalies now, except for one. Then in 2020-21, I guess it was a shortened season, but I'm seeing Logan Thompson and Stuart Skinner, current NHL goalies. And then this past season. Yeah. So I'm just saying, it's not like it's not like the kind of award where you'll just be like, whatever, everyone wins that. You look back a couple years ago and we're seeing like all NHL goalies now that won that award.
If you're a goalie of the month in the AHL, that's how you become an NHL goalie.
Well, exactly.
By playing well. Doesn't mean you're good in the NHL is part two of the question.
Yeah. Well, I'm just responding to you scoffed when I said he was the AHL goalie of the month, like saying how this is like a garbage thing to say. Like why waste breath with such a comment?
I loved it. I laughed because I think it's the first time we've ever noted the AHL goalie of the month. This could be a new statistical data point for us to keep an eye on.
Okay. Yeah. We'll have to watch. So next up, let's go to, actually we're still on. Okay. Actually, let me just. Okay, Brian, and since we're on Washington, I'll just mention quickly, goals in 2 straight games for Connor Sherry, playing on the top line with Strome and Ovi. We don't need to, you know how he is. He's always the same, right? He's like a decent stream. And if Washington has a good schedule, next week, Washington has a good schedule. They play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Friday's a busy day. So I don't know if Dave Betton of the Stream Scheme is going to call that a streamagami. I just realized I haven't listened to Stream Scheme yet. That dropped on Saturday. I don't want to listen to it. I forgot. Oh man, I gotta check that out. But yeah, I don't know if he called that a streamagami, but either way, Connor Sherry makes a good pickup for next week. But Brian, okay, I got one more goalie to talk about. That's not exactly an injury, and you brought him up already, Cal Peterson. We'll look at what's going on in LA, and then we'll get to some other injuries in Detroit and Pittsburgh. I'm sure people know who we're talking about. I actually got a lot of injuries left to go, so we should probably speed this up a little bit. We'll get to all that in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right. Do you want me to throw to you about whatever you were putting your hand up there? Okay. Okay. All right. We are back with part 2 of part 1 of today's episode of Keeping Karlsson, number 464. And we're still just talking injuries here, though this is not an injury. But Brian, like I said, I want to go to LA now, talk about Cal Peterson being sent down. Ben and Lewis already talked about this on Thursday, so I don't need to dive too deep. But I'll just mention Cal Peterson did have a good game. He led only 1 goal in Ontario Reigns' last game. So, I'd imagine the purpose of his being sent down is like, it's not like LA's giving up on him forever, right? They want him to find his game and come back.
He could be the next AHL goalie of the month.
I mean, for his sake, I'm sure he's hoping that it doesn't come to that and he gets called up sooner. But yeah, maybe if he stays there, he could be, especially now that Hunter Shepard's in the NHL. So that's less competition. Meanwhile, Jonathan Quick continues to struggle, right? He led in 4 versus Carolina on Saturday in the 4-2 loss. Jonathan Quick has started the last 5 games for LA and he hasn't been good. So I wonder if, just to throw out all these, this is the episode, Brian, when you're naming the episode, I know you like to do a pun about a song or some like saying or something, but you could also just call it like Brian and Elon talk about no-name goalies, because I'm going to throw out Phoenix Copley as someone who is now on the team as the backup to a goalie, Jonathan Quick, who clearly needs a break and isn't doing well. So I wonder if A, is Phoenix Copley going to get a game in soon? And B, do you think he's someone that could potentially pull like a Ville Husso and come up from the minors and end up stealing the job for a bit?
I'm not going to rule anything out because Jonathan Quick has been bad, right? Like he has been ripe for the picking since, I don't know, a month into the season. And for the last few years now as well, Jonathan Quick has been pretty ripe for the picking and Cal Peterson hasn't picked him. So let's see if Phoenix Copley can come in and do something. Elon, how old do you think Phoenix Copley is?
I know how old he is because I picked him up in my dynasty league. He's like 32 or something, or 31.
He's 30, but like, I feel like I remember talking about him a long time ago. It just made me feel old. He's from North Pole, Alaska, by the way. A lot of fun goalie origin stories here. But Copley's an undrafted journeyman at this point. He's actually always looked half decent in the 31 NHL games he's played over the course of his 7-year career. So we'll see. And the bar for beating Jonathan Quick is not that high, except that he's like the franchise love, like they love him in LA, but I'm sure they'll love a goalie who can come in and stop a few more pucks. So I think there is a chance that Phoenix Copley can come in and do something here. Ranked against, you want to try and rank the guys? I feel like we need a running list here. We've got Copley, we've got Lindgren, Shepard, Martin, Soderblom. Mm-hmm. I might put him third on that list behind Martin and Soderblom.
Yeah, perhaps. I guess like we didn't give enough respect to Charlie Lindgren. I was like, right away, let's talk about Hunter Shepard just because I was excited about what, like, probably he's third since he is an actual backup goalie that now should get a shot at being the starter. Also, Darcy Kemper, though, might not be out very long, right? We don't even have an update on him. But yeah, sure. I don't think that anyone should add Phoenix Copley beyond maybe a spot start, but anything could happen. Okay.
Anything could happen. And Peterson strings together a few good games in the AHL. He's back up.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, the Kings switched the lines around in that loss to Carolina. Midway through the game, Adrian Kempe got bumped to the third line, and Arthur Kaliev played a bit with Kopitar and Fiala. They didn't score at even strength, but Kaliev got another power play goal from the second power play. He's got 7 power play goals this season from power play 2. I don't know if this means LA should be playing the second power play more, or if this just means they need to move Kaliev to the top power play to bump Kempe from there as well, because clearly this guy's good at scoring with the man advantage. Anyways, I'm very interested to see what LA's lines are going to be next game, because that'll be interesting about Kempe. We already talked about him slumping last episode, and he actually kind of responded. He had 3 points in 3 games since we last talked about him. But of course, if he's going to be going to the third line, this is like a Brock Besser situation where maybe you try to trade him now before people start to realize that he's not going to be able to keep up this recent little run. I'm curious to get your thoughts on if Kempe is someone you're nervous about. And on the other side, Kaliev, imagine if he gets to hold on to that. He's been having a really good season, and just no one's been interested in rostering him in a lot of leagues, because why would you want to roster a line 4 or line 3 and PP2 guy? But all of a sudden, if he's line 1 with Kopitar and Fiala, yeah, definitely give me Kaliev. I'd be very interested. Though, of course, another, thing out there to be keeping in mind is that Alex Iafallo has been practicing and could come back soon. So a lot of moving parts potentially over in LA. Shams actually asked us to bring up here, how worried should Kempe managers be? So Brian, putting this all together, Kempe, Kaliev, Alex Iafallo, who are you into? Who are you not into? What do you think?
Yeah, so Kempe, I think he's more useful to the Kings on the top line than the third line, and he's 5 months removed from a 4-year, $5.5 million deal. So I think it's likely he finds his way back up. The biggest concern is Kaliev. If he looks good up there, which he's looked good in limited time on the power play, somehow continuously producing from the second unit and the fourth line. But I again talked on our Discord server about him earlier this week. I pinged, actually, we have a really great feature where if you want to know about a specific player on a team that you don't get to see that much, you can actually tag everyone in the server who's identified themselves as a fan of that team. So I pinged all the Kings fans and said, "Hey, like, what do you guys see in Kaliev?" And the answer was like, yeah, bursts of things that look good. Hasn't put the whole game together yet, but also it's like a chicken or egg question. He also hasn't had the deployment. So we'll see if he can run away with a really great deployment situation. That would be bad news for Campe. I would like to have him while he's on the top line in case he does run away. Like, not a very, I wouldn't, it's a risky play. It's not so.
It's not even that risky because he's even doing well from the bottom lines.
Yeah, right. But when he shouldn't be, I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't race to be like, oh, top line Kaliev, he's sticking there for the year. But there is an outside chance that he can hold on there a little longer than we expect. But I assume the Kings want to see Kempe up there. And you notice I haven't mentioned Alex Iafallo's name once in this conversation because I don't think he's in it. I don't think there's a chance that he ends up on the top line.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, or he could bump someone from the second. I guess not from the second line. That second line is locked in.
Second line, there's like the most untouchable line in the whole NHL. Name me a line less likely to be broken up than Danault, Moore, and Arvidsson.
Maybe that top line on Montreal. I don't know. St. Louis really likes those three together. But
it's a good thought.
But anyways, that line's only been around for like a month or two. Like this second line on LA has been around since midway through last season. Never a change. All right. By the way, I'm kicking myself. Brian, you always, whenever I tell you about all these players that I missed out on, you always tell me that I shouldn't worry about it. I didn't make a bad choice. Though you told me last episode or the one before, I was like, I really blew it dropping Arturi Lehkonen when I did. He was like he's doing so amazing, blah, blah. And you were like, don't worry. Like you had a good reason to, like, they had a bad schedule that week. And then people on the Discord were like, Brian, no, it was a bad decision. You shouldn't have dropped him. Like,
well, of course it was a bad decision because he's been great. All I did was help rationalize your thinking and mind at the time.
But I'm just gonna tell you before I bring up this next guy, it's okay for you to tell me I effed up. Like, don't try to make my feelings okay. Like, just give me your honest opinion, because I'm kicking myself for dropping Sean Durzi. I had him in like both of my major leagues, and the same ones that I could have had Max Domi in, and I had him. Then he was doing well. I was happy with him. Then at one point he went cold for a bit, and I was like, all right, I guess I don't need this guy. Drop Sean Durzi. Dude's on fire now. 7 points his last 5 games. He's up to 16 points in 24 games on the season for a 55-point pace. Feels to me like a clear season hold at this point in a league like the Cupful. I can't believe I dropped him. I need D. I streamed in Michael Stone, his brother, last week because I needed D, and I thought he looked interesting. Imagine if I just kept Sean Durzi. The face palm.
Yeah, Elon, I'm sorry to say, but holy cow, did you F this one? No, I actually don't think you did. I think it was I know. And you're rolling your eyes. Sean Durzi's been someone I've been low on the whole, like, people have been high on going into the season. And I haven't been able to get on board the Durzi train. Here's how he did it, Elon. He had a power play point in 5 straight games. He has a this is a running streak. He's on 5 consecutive games of power play points from the second unit. So now Durzi is averaging 1 power play point every 3 games with second unit time. 8 power play points in 24 games. That should be like a season long 82 game total from the second unit. So I think he's overperforming there. He's also scored thrice on 24 shots. That's 3 times as many goals as Durzi should probably have. I know I'm always low on him, but I don't see a ton there. I think he's an opportunistic guy. I think he's got a head up on a lot of other NHL defensemen who can't make something out of the rare opportunities they might get because of their deployment. So I think that's something Durzi seems to have going for him. But if I'm sensing your FOMO, Elon, I'm offering you Sean Durzi. Like, what would you pay me from your Cupful team if I put Sean Durzi on the table for him?
I'll give you Michael Stone. What do you think?
So you were so excited about it. You thought you found this diamond in the rough.
He was doing really well, and then he came back from injury and he hasn't done anything. I don't know. Who do I have in my Cupful team? Okay, let me tell you who I would give you for Sean Durzi at this point. Maybe Barabanov. think that's a pretty fair. Oh, I have JJ Moser. I'd give up JJ Moser for Sean Dursey.
I think I'd rather Jersey. I would just take the guy
Yeah.
producing between them both.
I would take Dursey. Yeah. Ryan Pulock. I'll take Dursey over Ryan Pulock.
Me too. Yeah.
You know that I've had Ryan Pulock on my roster all season, except for the game where he had 4 assists. I dropped him for that game. Then he had 4 assists. Then I added him back.
I didn't know you'd added him back. This
is Mike a couple season.
Throwing good money after bad there.
I'd give Ilya Mikheyev for Sean Dursey.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're just naming a bunch of guys that shouldn't be rostered.
Well, sucks to be me, Brian. What do you want me to say?
I can see why you're mad you missed out on Dursey. I would trade Luke Shen for Sean Dursey.
Yeah, me too.
That's my rostered example.
All right, a couple more injuries here that have already been discussed by Ben and Lewis on short shifts earlier this week, and Tyler Bertuzzi and yes, Chris Letang, who we brought up at the start of the show. We should mention related to Bertuzzi that him being like out of the lineup or on a different line from Dylan Larkin, like has it bothered Dylan Larkin? Like it's kind of interesting. Like Larkin and Bertuzzi had been together for so long and producing together. I kind of thought that Bertuzzi helped Larkin at least a little bit, but now like Larkin's assist in the loss to Vegas on Saturday brought Larkin to 26 points in 23 games on the season. That's a 93-point pace, which would be a career high. He's also shooting more than ever. Detroit is playing today, and Larkin doesn't have a point yet. Actually, Detroit's up 4-2. At one point, I saw that Larkin scored. It must have been called off or something. People in the chat maybe could let me know. But yeah, Larkin looking really good. Doesn't need Tyler Bertuzzi to do it. I remember we had an interview with
Prashanth Iyer.
Yes, with Prashanth Iyer, and I even recall him saying that like Detroit's definitely going to extend Bertuzzi. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. I feel like he even said that like Larkin and Bertuzzi are good together. But at this point, forget about Bertuzzi in terms of Larkin. Like, do you think Larkin is going to be able to have this career year and put up these 90 points, regardless of if Bertuzzi's there or not? Like, do you believe in what you're seeing from Larkin so far?
I believe in a lot of it. Dylan Larkin, by the way, has just one more power play point than Sean Dursey to drive that point home. And Larkin has been doing well on the power play. That's 9 power play points. It looks really good. I think Larkin's line may be overperforming, and that might be why he's doing so well without Tyler Bertuzzi. They're scoring nearly 1 actual goal per hour above their expected numbers, shooting 10.5% on the whole, which could keep up. I'm just not sure it will, and if that number regresses, I would set Larkin's target to an 80-point season rather than the current 90-point pace he's on. But really, like, this is a good player, good year. I like what I'm seeing from him. And Prashanth, initially, remember in the early interview years with him, he was like, he's going to be a great second line center on a competitive Detroit team. He's since updated that take, right, to say Larkin looks like a legit top line centerman on a contending team. Here's a callback to something earlier in the show. I would trade Patrick Kane for Dylan Larkin.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. Pretty
Remember,
close.
I said like trade Patrick Kane for someone more stable, like around a point per game pace already. If you could pull that off, I'd do it.
Yeah, I think so. I guess it's the position considerations, like depending on, some people like tweeted us and are like, they only have 2 center spots and there's no or there's no utils. And so there's like all these amazing centers in free agency. So obviously you need to consider that. But yeah, I think in the cupful, I might make that deal as well. I could see it going either way. Good one, Brian. By the way, now the second line center for a future Detroit Cup winning team is probably going to be the guy they drafted. What is this guy's name? I got him in my dynasty league. That's why I'm hoping that that's the case. Oh, Marco Kasper. That's it. He's hopefully the second line center behind Dylan Larkin for a cup winning team in a couple of years. Okay. And then in Pittsburgh, okay, Chris Letang. I mean, there's not much to say, right? Obviously you want to get Jeff Petrie. Ben and Lewis covered that. I do want to mention something else on Pittsburgh, which is that in the last game, Rickard Rakell jumped to the top power play in the 6-2 win over St. Louis, bumping Brian Rust. So Rakell is now on the line with Crosby and Gensel and on the top power play with those two in Malkin and Jeff Petrie. So what a season. Like, this is going really well for Rickard Rakell. Actually, when I say what a season, he only has a 49-point pace on the year, but I'm very excited for him going forward. I'm surprised he's so low. Like, he had no points in that game versus St. Louis. I guess that didn't help. He did have 5 shots. He's in a great spot deployment wise, only 61% rostered on Yahoo. And like I said, only a 49-point pace. Got to imagine both of these numbers are going to rise if this deployment holds, right?
Sorry, just a sec. Yeah, if this deployment holds, which we don't know how long this is going to work for Rickard Rakell. The last time he got the promotion to the top power play unit, Rakell lasted there for like 3 games, he put up a point on the power play, but also an 8-shot and a 5-shot game. So that was really good. But on the whole, you can sense my skepticism, perhaps, that Raquel keeps Brian Rust out of this spot for very long. But in the meantime, I would go get him anyway. This isn't to say don't do it because it might not last. Yeah, go get Rickard Raquel. You want someone playing on the top power play in Pittsburgh with Malkin and Gensel and Crosby. Get that guy. I love that Raquel has 18 shots in his last 4 games. You need to combine Raquel's previous 9 games to find the 18 shots that came before these 18 shots in 4 games. So love to see Raquel in a good spot. His whole career, we've been like, if he's in a good spot with a good team, he could do damage. He's been a little disappointing in that respect, because I think he's had those opportunities already in Pittsburgh, didn't do so much damage, wasn't able to hold on to them. We'll see if this time goes any differently.
Yeah, definitely. And in the meantime, it's very funny that Brian Rust got bumped from the top power play. This guy, that was the motivation he needed to finally have a really big night. He had a huge game on Saturday, 1 goal and 3 assists from his line with Zucker and Malkin. I think one of those points came also on the second power play, which almost makes me think like that's great that he did that. But also then it's just going to make the coach think that he made a smart decision and might as well leave him off the top power play, maybe give a boon to the second power play. So yeah, I don't know. Ryan Rust now is like very interesting because on one hand, he broke that cold stretch, but on the second hand, his deployment is the worst ever. Though I guess you can't call it that bad if you're playing on a line with Malkin, who's been amazing. You know, also Jason Zucker has been having a really great season. He also had a multi-point game in that game versus St. Louis. He's now up to 18 points in 23 games. That's Jason Zucker for a 64-point pace, ahead of Rust and Raquel by a significant amount. So, Brian, if you were going to rank these 3 for total points by the end of the season, assuming no injuries, Raquel, Rust, Zucker, what's your ranking there? Or is it just all really close?
I'd go Rust, Zucker, Raquel would be the way I'd see it going through. And I like Zucker ahead of Raquel because he's looked good. I mean, he just finished a cold snap where he had 1 point in 8 games, but he was a point per game player through his first 14 games this year, 2.5 shots per game, 4 goals, 10 assists, 14 points. But even while dry, Zucker was still putting 2.5 shots on goal per game. He's having a really good shooting season, both in volume and threat. And actually, this is a really good threat level from Jason Zucker. He's back up to a high watermark for his career, where we last saw him in his age 23 season 8 years ago with Minnesota, 2014-15. And that moment made us believe, when Zucker was the tender age of 23, that he could be a real goal scorer in the league. Fortunately, there's been a lot of frustrating moments since then from Zucker, who's now in his age 31 season. But it's great to see these numbers back. And this is a really dangerous line he's on. Like this line, Malkin, Rust, and Zucker, really impressive numbers as a trio, the way they're dominating play and generating chances. So I like Zucker for like 55, 60 points. I see Raquel falling just shy of those numbers, but he's going to need like actual sustained power play 1 production to get there. And you know, Brian Rust, I'll give him a long leash. I know it's no consolation to anybody struggling with him right now, but hopefully he's off the schneid with that performance on Saturday night.
Yeah, I guess Jason here in the chat, which by the way is a perk for patrons. If you're a patron keeping Karlsson, you come hang out for our live shows. We really enjoy it. We've been having a lot of fun chatting and people helping us out even. Shams actually, by the way, but back to the Sean Durzi talk, he pointed out that maybe he's just like riding that Kaliev train. I talked about all those Kaliev power play goals. That's where Durzi's getting all of his power play assists, right, Brian? Anyways, like Jason, back to this Pittsburgh talk, he said Raquel, Zucker, Rust. That's where I was kind of leaning myself. I don't know. Like, I guess you're obviously higher on Brian Rust than I am. I guess it could go either way, but especially because, you know, obviously Evgeny Malkin, no jinx, but he's not one to generally play all season. So there's going to probably be a moment maybe where Rust is playing on a second line with, I don't know, someone else like Jeff Carter as a centerman. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited about Raquel, but maybe I've just always been a kind of a fan of his.
Me too. I would love, I'm tempering my excitement. I've been let down too many times.
Fair. That's fair. All right, let's go to Colorado. Another injury here. Arturi Lehkonen, the guy who at one point I dropped, and then he went on an insane hot streak, which could only be ended by an injury, unfortunately, because he left Saturday's game against Boston with an upper body injury, which is a shame. He's been on such an amazing run. Hopefully he's okay. In the meantime, he joins, Nichushkin, Landeskog, Rodriguez. Like, Colorado is down a lot of their top end forwards, which maybe explains why they just got totally destroyed by Boston. And if you look at the lines, the guy who was playing on the top line with McKinnon and Rantanen after Lehkonen went down was a person named Jean-Luc Foodie. So that's, I guess, an interesting spot. You generally want to have the guy playing with McKinnon and Rantanen. Then on the top power play, JT Compher had already taken, I guess, Rodriguez's spot, which is really Nichushkin's spot, which is really Landeskog's spot. I don't know. But anyways, Compher had been there. And then Alex Newhook in this last game got the spot on the top power play for Lehkonen. So Brian, I guess now we got to look into some of these Colorado. Anyway, I don't know, for next week, if all these guys are still injured, apparently Nichushkin is going to be returning soon. So that's great. That's great news for him and for Colorado. They could definitely use him at this point, especially if Lehkonen is going to be out long term. I don't think we have an update yet on how long Lehkonen is going to be out. But in the meantime, assuming all these guys are injured, are we going to be recommending to grab either line 1 Jean-Luc Foodie or PP1 JT Compher or Alex Newhook?
All of them could be worth a stream. Like, I have nothing unique to say, right? Like, this is, if you're in a place where the Avs generate offense from, you're in a good spot. So Jean-Luc Foodie, he holds on to this top line. By the way, this guy's a really interesting family background. Don't know if you knew this, Elon, but Jean-Luc Foodie's mom, France, I'm guessing, for France, if it's really anglicized, was an Olympic sprinter and won silver in Los Angeles in 1984 in the 4x100 meter relay. Jean-Luc's father, Sean, is a CFL player drafted by the Ottawa Rough Riders, won a Grey Cup with the BC Lions in 1994, retired after dislocating his shoulder 7 times in a span of like 2 years. So that was a good reason to retire. And his brother, Liam, you might know him. He plays in the NHL, drafted 18th overall.
Yeah, he's like a Columbus prospect, right?
Yeah, in 2018, he plays for Columbus. And Jean-Luc Foodie was drafted 75th overall in 2020 by Colorado. But he's never been like a scorer, even in junior. So I don't, this feels like, you know what this feels like to me? Maybe Logan O'Connor on the top line. I don't know if you remember that name from last year, where for sure it could work out. Yeah, he is. But last year he was a frustrating stream because he seemed to have everything lined up to make it work out. And it was pretty random when things were going well and things weren't. But Foodie so far in the HL this year, 14 points in 18 games, 3rd in team scoring behind a 34-year-old and a 28-year-old. So not prospects. So I guess that's why Jean-Luc Foodie has earned the look to join the Avs. And all like him and Newhook and Compher, all I guess Rodriguez too, all good streaming targets.
Well, he's injured. Yeah, Rodriguez is part
he's one of the injured guys. Yeah.
I agree with you. Like maybe stream one in for a game. Don't expect it to last or for it to do like so amazing for you. I just Googled France Foodie. I'm seeing family pictures of this family. Yeah, good for the parents here. 2 very athletic people, clearly an Olympic sprinter and a football player, both still in good shape, even in their later days.
Good genes.
Nice. Phil Torius asked on Discord, actually, before Lehkonen got hurt, Phil Torius was asking with Nichushkin's near return, does Lehkonen get replaced by Nichushkin on the top line and or the top power play? And so I think the answer for that is maybe not the top line, because I think that Nichushkin wasn't on the top line before. And I think on the top power play, there's room for both of them, right? It could be Rantanen, McKinnon, Lehkonen, and Nichushkin. It's only when Landeskog comes back, that's when, and apparently he started skating. So like Colorado, I don't know if people remember, they're a very good team. Like when everyone's healthy, it'll be fun to see this team at full. They're still like doing pretty well, probably just because of their amazing defense and these 2 superstars in McKinnon and Rantanen. But it'll be really fun to see if they ever get back to being at full strength. They're like a lot of good players that are injured right now.
Yeah, no, totally, absolutely. I would never look away from an Av, but like you said, Lehkonen's value is likely to hold as long as Landeskog is out of the lineup.
Okay, so next injury here, Philip Hedl missed Saturday's game for the Rangers with a lower body injury. You may be thinking, why are you talking about Philip Hedl, like a bottom of the roster guy? Actually, no. Okay, Philip Hedl recently had been centering Panarin's line, Panarin's line for a couple games. Vincent Trocheck had been bumped to the 3rd line. Then in this game on Saturday, Trocheck went back to the 2nd line to play with Panarin. Didn't go that well. The Rangers got beaten by Chicago 5-2. It was Halak playing, and maybe that had played a part of it, but you should be able to beat Chicago if you're the New York Rangers. So I don't know. And Vincent Trocheck, I don't know. I wonder if he's on borrowed time at this point. Maybe while Hedel is out, like they'll have no choice but to play Trocheck on line 2. But he's had such a big fall after a strong start to the season. Like I'm counting only 6 points in the last 17 games for Vincent Trocheck. 5 of those 6, by the way, were from his top power play spot. So at even strength, you're not getting anything from Vincent Trocheck. And obviously that will be less likely to continue if he's bumped to line 3 like he was before this Hedel injury. So we had a question from Alyssa. At what point does Trocheck become droppable in shallower leagues, like 12-team leagues? And why did I have to draft him on almost all of my teams?
Frustrating guy. Like Trocheck has always been frustrating, right? If Trocheck giveth, Trocheck taketh away. And the thing with Vincent Trocheck is he seems to only suck in ways that numbers don't always show. So I feel like, maybe Ben on short shifts could also tackle this question, as someone with I think is more plugged into the Rangers than either of us are. But it's so frustrating for Trocheck. He seems to get randomly bumped through his career out of good situations and can't hold them even when he's doing well. I wonder if Trocheck was a victim of really just a poor on-ice shooting percentage. The coach is saying, oh, well, the line's not getting things done, but they look really good under the hood. The Trocheck's line has been getting some great chances. He and his line mates are just shooting under 6% at 5-on-5, which means they only have 12 goals together while they're on the ice, 19 goals against. And that's the difference between Trocheck's line winning and losing, the goals share battle when they're on the ice together. And I feel like maybe he's just being penalized for some bad shooting percentage. He himself is only shooting 4% at 5-on-5, just 2 goals on 51 shots for Trocheck, but 6 expected goals. So he should be doing better. But, again, there always seems to be something about this guy that coaches don't love or don't want to nurture. So I guess we'll see. At least, like you said, Elon, that power play 1 production is still coming. He's still on it. I'm in a league about Elisa's size. She said 12 teams, 16-man rosters, right? If Trocheck was dropped, I mean, my team, my bottom forwards are Kuzmenko and Tatar. I would definitely swap them out for Vincent Trocheck. So my advice would be to not drop him in that size league.
I don't know. I guess you love Trocheck and you love Brian Rust, so it'll be fun to check back in a few weeks and see if this is good advice or not.
I mean, well, like my Achilles heel is I'm overly patient with guys I've seen produce in the past, especially when I can explain the reasons they're not producing now, and it doesn't seem to be a drop in the quality of their play.
Yeah, but the coaches don't agree with you, right? If they're bumping these guys down the lineup.
Well, I mean, definitely Trocheck has a red flag next to his name. He always has, and I thought this was going to be a nice, smooth year for him in the big city, in the Big Apple.
No, I mean, hey, I don't argue. Like, I feel like this is good. Like, it's easy to come on and be like, oh, he's cold, so drop him, right? So you're saying still hold on, and it'll be fun now to see if Alyssa could at least get some, benefit. Really, like, you didn't make a mistake drafting him on almost all your teams. You made the mistake by not trading him when he was super hot at the start of the year. You probably could have gotten a really huge return. Jason is saying here in the chat that he traded Trocheck for Trevor Zegras and Samsonov.
Yeah,
nice
that sounds good.
I love Trevor Zegras, especially on Anaheim with those off days. Mwah. Okay. One last set of injuries before we end part 1 here in Florida. So a bunch of people are hurt. Barkov is sick, so hopefully he'll be back soon. Though he's missed a few games, so that sucks for him. Hopefully he's feeling better. Anton Lundell has an upper body injury. Gudas and Hornqvist both left Saturday's games. For Bangers leagues, obviously it's a huge loss. If Gudas is going to be out long term, I don't think we have an update there. Doesn't matter anyways. They were missing all these players. Florida still destroyed. Doesn't matter. Florida still destroyed the Kraken with Philip Grubauer in net 5-1 on Saturday. That top line, the now top line of Kachuk, Bennett, and Verhaeghe all had multi-point games. Really, with all these people injured, it's kind of like Colorado. You basically have one good line, and then poor Sam Reinhart had to fend for himself on a line with Cousins and Luosterainen. I don't think there's much here to discuss with the forwards. I think we've talked about a lot of these guys. I'll just jump to the goalies very quickly, which should be pretty obvious at this point. Spencer Knight, unless you're living under a rock, this shouldn't be news to you. Spencer Knight has taken over as a starter for Florida. This is been happening for a while now. There was even quotes from the coach saying that he's ready to give Spencer Knight a starter's workload. He's having an amazing season. He had 2 straight gems this week versus Vancouver and Seattle. Knight is up to a .923 save percentage in 14 games. Meanwhile, Bobrovsky barely playing, and when he is playing, he's terrible, right? He has an .878 save percentage now in 12 games after letting in 6 goals versus Calgary at the start of the week. So I think, Brian, I hope you're not going to disagree with me here. Well, I'll be interested if you do, but I think the advice here is that Spencer Knight should be rostered in basically all leagues. I can't imagine a league where you don't want him. I think Bobrovsky is basically should be rostered in no leagues at this point, unless you're in a league where it's like every single goalie in the league is rostered, because you need even, if David Riddick is rostered in your league, then fine, roster Bobrovsky. But I think at this point, it's very clear that we've got a starter and a backup. The starter is awesome and the backup is not good. So that's a shame.
Yeah, I'm not at all going to disagree with you. Knight has been playing like a starter. Bobrovsky has been playing like a backup. And I don't think I need to slice it any more than that. Way to go, Spencer Knight, for beating out the $10.5 million guy. Like, I don't know. I don't know how this turns around if they both keep playing the way they're playing. As you mentioned, Elon, like in my couple division, Bobrovsky was dropped, sat in free agency. No one put in a waiver claim, sat in free agency. Someone grabbed him for a stream, I think, but I didn't.
They got bit. They got bit with 6 goals against.
Yeah. So, I think Bobrovsky is barely rosterable.
Yeah, not rosterable. I'm going to say Jason.
Yeah.
Jason asked here in the chat, is it time to drop Bob?
It's time to drop Bob.
A week ago. And you know what? Remember how we were saying that Kevin is going to be doing an audit of a couple divisions to find inactive teams? I feel like to save time, just find all the teams with Bobrovsky. Those are the teams that probably we want to look into as teams that might not be paying attention at this point.
Just kidding. But yeah.
But if you're listening and you have Bobrovsky, like just drop, trust me. Fine, like maybe wait at this point. Fine, wait to see if he gets announced to start the next game, but he won't. I'm telling you, he won't. It's going to be Spencer Knight most likely. All right, Brian, we still have outjuries to get to, and then a bunch of hot and cold streaks. Like for the outjuries, we're going to go to obviously talk about Patrick Laine's return, Tara Vinen's less exciting return to Carolina, and then a bunch of exciting streaks, including some guys in Buffalo who just don't slow down. So we're going to get to all that in part 2 of this episode of Keeping Karlsson. So for those of you who are subscribed to our feed, you'll see the episode. If you're not subscribed to our feed, subscribe to the feed, please. That really helps us out. And then you'll get all of the episodes automatically. All the short shifts from Ben and Lewis, the stream scheme from Dave Betton, and part 1 and part 2 all the time. And you would already have part 2 waiting for you. So there you go. Thanks for listening to part 1. We'll see you in a sec. Bye, everyone. Okay. Brian, ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Can I clip you, Elon, for goalie starts for Florida's next game? Oh, like to just put it on the game day tweets. Go for it. Elon says probably Bobrovsky will play. That could be the tweet. Or not won't play, I should say. Okay. Here we go. All right. I did the jokey voice here. Yes, welcome everybody to part 2 of episode 464 of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, recorded today, Sunday, December 4th. It is currently 8:47 p.m. and it is 2 degrees in Toronto on a beautiful Sunday evening. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and we still have a ton to talk about with fantasy hockey over the past week, because we have outjuries, we have hot streaks, we have cold streaks with myself. I said I'm Elon Dubrovsky, and of course, our very good friend, Brian Comp. Brian, how are you feeling after going through all of those devastating injuries from part 1?
I'm ready to be uplifted by the outjuries and hot streaks to come.
All right, well, let's start over in Columbus. Exciting times over in Columbus. Patrick Laine is back in the fold. He had 2 goals on 2 shots Friday versus Winnipeg in the 4-1 win, so it didn't take him long. I guess it would have been nice to see him take like 8 shots and then score those 2 goals, but I guess you're not going to complain. Columbus just finished their game versus Detroit, and Detroit won 4-2. Patrick Laine, no points, but 5 shots. So, okay, we'll take it. Overall, now we've got 2 goals on 7 shots in 2 games. Welcome back, Patrick Laine. Brian, I traded Laine for Jeff Skinner like a week ago. And Jeff Skinner also keeps scoring every game. So Laine came back a lot earlier than expected. I made the trade mostly because I was like, I'm reeling here and I need some immediate help to my cupful team. And then as soon as I made the trade, like 2 days later, it was announced that Laine was going to be back ahead of schedule. So it's a little bit like another classic move for me in the 2022-23 cupful season. But I guess I'm not too mad about it, right? They're probably pretty even. Who do you think does better rest of season? I'm happy with Skinner.
I think you should be. I think it's pretty close between them. They're both inconsistent, both kind of unpredictable. Laine has more of an injury history, so maybe he got out from under that. But I think he also might, I think he probably has the bigger upside. I think it's a fair deal, Elon. I think I would personally prefer Laine by a titch, but you traded an injured Laine for a healthy Jeff Skinner who could have helped you right away. So I think I think that washes out any difference there might have been between them.
Yeah, overall, I'm okay. Skinner also has a goal today. Laine didn't have a goal today, and Skinner had 6 shots in this game versus San Jose, which still has a period to go. Of course, I lost the trade because at the very end, I was like, I had to throw in a forward, and I just threw in Blake Wheeler. I had the choice of any forward, and I told you, Brian, on the last episode, all the great forwards on my team that I chose to keep instead of Blake Wheeler, who is red hot right now. So, of course, I still lost the trade. So, congratulations, Jordan. But okay, Laine's back. I don't know really what to say about that. Elvis Merzlikins has also been activated from the IR, but hasn't played yet. Imagine holding him. And then, like, usually when a player is brought off the IR, it means that you put him in your roster and you play him. It's kind of frustrating that you had to drop someone to bring Elvis Merzlikins in just for Korpisalo to play. And Korpisalo had a great game versus Winnipeg on Friday, stopping 37 of 38. So he got the start again today on Sunday. And like I just said, he lost to Detroit. Let's get the numbers here. He stopped 31 of 35. Not amazing, but doesn't look like the team helped him too much. So got to imagine Merzlikins gets into the next game for Columbus. So if he's in free agency, maybe you stream him in, hope that his time off has been an opportunity for him to do what I was hoping will happen with Thatcher Demko, right? Get his head together and find the goalie that he used to be.
Exactly. That's what we're hoping for Merzlikins. I mean, my hopes aren't sky high, but again, like this is like we've talked a lot about Korpisalo, right? In the narrative where, it's bounced back with a great start. The thing is that he's always bouncing back. This is after his 974 performance. He always bounces back, Korpisalo, because he always has bad games to bounce back from. His last 4 games going into today, from the most recent, were 974, 875, 929, 838. So 2 big bounce backs from Korpisalo in there because he was bad in the others. So I am not a big fan of his. I don't think it's long before Elvis Merzlikins gets back in the net. I hope he rested up like you, Elon, and whatever vacation he was on worked well. I know better than to completely rely on Merzlikins, but I think at least he's going to be, I don't know if he's going to see quite Spencer Martin, Arvid Soderblom volume, but I'm hoping he'll do better with what he faces than what those guys. But I expect those guys will do. Although, remember I said Vancouver and Chicago were 30th and 31st in the league and expect goals against at 5-on-5. Guess who's 29th? It's the Columbus Blue Jackets.
So who's 32? Oh, is it
Anaheim.
Seattle? Oh, Anaheim.
No, Anaheim. Yeah.
By the way, another big difference is I think that Joonas Korpisalo is the starter now, right? Like he got these 2 games when Elvis was healthy. So it's a very big difference between Spencer Martin and Soderblom.
I don't know. I think
maybe
I don't
50,
think Korpisalo is the starter.
So maybe, fine, 50-50.
I don't even think 50-50. Maybe it starts 50-50 and then eventually Merzlikins plays, 2 of 3.
I don't think so. Well, we'll see. You're saying it starts 50-50. It starts with Korpisalo playing every game. Then I guess you're saying next it'll go to 50-50. And then eventually you expect Merzlikins to take the job. I don't know. Korpisalo maybe is having a great bounce back season. He actually has over 900 save percentage.
I explained why we can call it a great bounce back. It's because he falls so low so often.
Yeah, but Merzlikins has been terrible. I don't know. Okay.
Agreed. I definitely don't see Merzlikins having the same kind of volume that we thought he would going into the season. Korpisalo has at least shown he can play well every other game, which is better than what Merzlikins has been providing for a lot of the year.
If Korpisalo can keep that schedule, then it becomes really easy to know when to stream him in, and you're going to do really well in fantasy. So hopefully he can keep it up. One good, one bad. All right. So next in the Outjury front, we've got Teuvo Teravainen, who made his return to the Hurricanes yesterday in the 4-2 win over LA. We talked about that game from the LA side earlier in part 1. Now let's look at the Carolina side, where Teuvo Teravainen in these 4 goals, no points, womp. From line 2, power play 2. He's playing this line 2 is with Svechnikov and Kotkaniemi. So you'd think with Svechnikov, that should be pretty good. But yeah, Teravainen continues his disappointing season. He now sits at no goals and 7 assists in 15 games. So we're now under half point per game. Brian, how long would you hold waiting for a sign of life now that you've had to bring Teuvo Teravainen out of the IR? Unfortunately, next week, Carolina has a bad schedule. They only play Tuesday and then Saturday. So let's say he goes pointless again on Tuesday. Are we holding this guy all the way till Saturday? A busy Saturday?
He does not have Brian Rust size patience from me. Teravainen, I'm not very hopeful at all for him as a non-power play 1 guy. And I mentioned that the last time we spoke of him, that holds. Yes, there's some unfortunate shooting. He hasn't scored on 21 shots. That's a shame for Teuvo Teravainen, but he had 31 power play points last year. And he has not yet been on the ice for a power play goal scored because he's not on that top power play unit in large part. So there's the top power play And second power play, that's like a 20 to 25 point difference. That's the difference between Teravainen being a 70, 75 point player versus a 50, 55 point player. And right now he doesn't have that top power play. Like he's got to clear Stefan Nason somehow, which no one has been able to do. I think Teravainen's ceiling without top power play time is probably 60 points. And that, again, that's the ceiling. Like I'm not expecting him to get above that without that top unit deployment. Elon, don't you have Teravainen on your roster? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I don't know, Brian. This is in a different league where I'm actually doing pretty well. And I traded for him when he was injured. I had too many players. I wanted to, open up a streaming spot. So I figured I'll be smart. I'll trade for an injured guy. Then when he comes back, I'll figure it out then. Now I'm having to pay the piper. Now I've got him. And it's like, I just dropped Kirby Doc when I probably should have dropped Teuvo Teravainen to stream someone in.
I would have dropped Teravainen before Doc.
Yeah. Well, fantasy's hard, but we still do a podcast doing our best to give advice here. Like I was saying, actually, before the show started, just with the people on YouTube, I feel like I'm giving decent advice. I feel like I'm not like doing so well this season. I think my brain's a bit off and like following the good advice and making the smart decisions for my teams. I still feel like we're dispensing the goods here on the podcast. I think I agree with you that Teravainen is very concerning at this point. One guy who is doing very well. Okay, I'm not going to waste time again drooling over Nachas or Burns. They had big weeks. We know about them. Let me mention Seth Jarvis, though, who we called a snoozer a while back, but he's hot again now. He's got 5 points in his last 5 games. He's been on the top line with Aho and Nachas. So you'd expect that. That's a good reason why he's going to have 5 points in his last 5 games. Do you think Jarvis is good enough that people listening now that see him in free agency, should they jump on him even though Carolina has that bad schedule that I was just talking about next week?
Yeah, the bad schedules are real. Like it's a bad schedule for Carolina next week. And Jarvis is following this frustrating trajectory that we've seen. I feel like we've seen it a bunch lately, like get early season hype, do nothing, like maybe do something early, then do nothing, let us give up, and then get good again. Like, a lighter version of Matty Beniers and how well he's done since I didn't trade Caitlin Addison for him when they were both stinking and we said drop Beniers. So I like Jarvis on the top line, but I'm not sure I like him enough to hold him through the 2 game week. So I probably wouldn't. It depends on where you are in your standings, right? This is like if you're fighting every week for your survival in your league, I think I'd let him sit. But if you can afford to be patient or don't mind giving up this week potentially and losing a couple games because you're holding Jarvis, then you could go get him. Although, Elon, this is a mistake that I think I've made a couple times this year, including with Arturi Lehkonen, where I was looking too much at the short term and not enough at the long term, which is like something I've tried to do more of. Like I feel like I've always been more of a long-term guy, and I'm trying to swap to the short term, but still not making the right choices. It's a tough strategic call, because if you grab him now and suffer through this week, but he's great for the next 4 or 5 and helps you win matchups, then it doesn't matter that he wasn't doing much for you this week. So I guess that's your question to me. Is the potential worth it? I would say without being on the top power play, and with, I assume if Nason ever leaves it, Teravainen gets on it. I don't think so. I don't think I would deal with him on my roster. I love that Jarvis is on a good run. I love that he's on the top line, but I don't know he's going to be sure shot rosterable all year, which is why I don't think I am going to hold him or go for him through a 2 game week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Hey, you could always see if he's still available closer to Saturday. Then you're not giving up maybe too many games by adding him, and maybe then you'd take another look. But I concur, probably like a 60 points, though he is like a very high pedigree guy. So it is possible that he's going to continue to go off here, and maybe he will take that top power play. But he was on top power play to start the year, if you recall. So next up, let's go to Toronto. Oh, I was going to mention Jordan Martinook had a hat trick for Carolina. I guess if we're not adding Seth Jarvis, we're probably not going to recommend for people to grab Martinook for a bad week, but good for him to have 3 goals versus St. Louis. Then he picked up another assist versus LA. So nice little run.
Good for him. It's almost like when I brought him up a few weeks ago and you dismissed me completely.
And then he did nothing.
And then he did nothing. Yeah. And then he did not. But my point then, as it is, was that
now, at one point this season he's going to have a good game. You called it.
No,
I'm going to say that about who should I say that now about? I think that Paul Stasny is going to have a 2-goal game at some point this
Talk
season.
about someone who's way off the radar in Carolina. Forget
So
him.
there you go.
He's
But
done.
now I'm going to be able to rub it in your face when he has that good game.
Okay.
I'm going to be like,
all right.
just like I predicted.
I get your point.
All right, let's go to Toronto now. Ilya Samsonov returned for the Leafs versus the Sharks earlier this week. It was amazing. He stopped 23 of 24 in the win. The Leafs then went back to Matt Murray for the game versus Tampa on Saturday. Murray, not as amazing, but they were against Tampa Bay, to be fair. He only stopped 29 of 33 in a 4-3 overtime loss. You know how I feel about these overtime losses. Let's just call it 3 goals against. It's a lot harder to stop goals when it's 3-on-3. Anyway, moving forward, do you think it's like a 50-50 thing now for the Leafs, or do you think that Keefe is going to stick with Matt Murray as the starter since he won 4 in a row?
Oh, Elon, you've muted yourself.
Oh no, since when?
Do you think Keefe is gonna, because he's won 4 in a row?
Sorry about that. Wait. Do you think Keefe is going to stick with Murray as the starter since he's won 4 in a row before the loss yesterday? He also has 7 straight games without a regulation loss. I'm talking about Matt Murray. So he's been very good for the Leafs, and the Leafs are on a roll, winning games. So like one school of thought would be to just keep rolling with what's working and play Matt Murray the majority of the games. Another school of thought is Matt Murray is the most injury-prone goalie in the world outside of maybe Petr Mrazek. So you're probably smarter to go 50-50, especially since Samsonov did pretty well. So no way to know. But what's your prediction of what the Leafs are going to do with their goalies?
Well, they have 2 fragile goalies, and I feel like the Leafs might elect to keep them both as rested as possible so that they're as healthy as possible. So I expect Samsonov and Murray to trade starts, assuming that they're both putting in the same quality when they are on the ice, which I expect them to, for better or for worse. I would not expect volume from either guy unless someone really blows it or someone really gets hot. And I feel like neither of these guys is going to be able to hold a really hot run for long enough to keep the other, like to really push the other off the mat. So that makes me like both Samsonov and Murray in a rates league. But in a volume situation, I have Murray in a league that basically only counts goalie wins. And I'm wondering how much longer I hold him. If he's only going to play every other game, even if he wins most of the time, he's still not getting a whole lot of wins from him.
Yeah, but that's just, you're guessing, right? I wouldn't drop him yet because so far he's been a huge volume guy.
No, I'm wondering. I'm keeping an eye on things because he's the presumptive starter because, as you mentioned, he's been on a good run. He's playing well, but Samsonov came in, played well. Murray lost. So we'll see. We'll see.
Shalgren had a good game at one point. Murray still got to play, but obviously Shalgren is not as good as
totally
Samsonov.
Different situation.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, we had a question from another Brian Zed on our Discord. Who ends with a higher point streak? Marner, who's currently at 19, or Robertson, obviously Jason Robertson, who's currently at 17. Both like 2 of the hottest players in the league. Jason Robertson, we've drooled about way too much to like dive into some more. But if you have a gut feeling, Brian, Marner or Robertson, who's going to have the longer streak?
I'm going to go Marner, one, because he's already 2 games ahead. And I feel like, he doesn't have as much pressure to score to keep his streak alive as Robertson does. I think it's easier to assist than to score, though the way Robertson is going, you may question that kind of thinking. He's making scoring look very easy. But yeah, I'll go Mitch Marner, even though this is not at all a knock against anything Jason Robertson is. It's a coin flip, but I'll take Marner. How about you?
Just for fun, I'm going to go Robertson here. He, by the way, this question was asked before today's game.
Is the fun part being contrarian?
The fun part is like he's behind 17 to 19, but now it's actually 18 because Robertson played today. And of course, when Dallas loses 6-5, that means 5 goals for Dallas. So of course, Robertson got in on a couple of them. I'm surprised he didn't get in on 3 of them. Only 1 goal and 1 assist for Jason Robertson. So a bad game for him, but still he keeps the streak going. Also 7 shots, this guy. So good. I'm so excited to see where we're going to be ranking him when we are making rankings for next season. Obviously, we'll see how this season plays out. By the way, Rupe Hintz, 3 goals and 1 assist in this game. Joe Pavelski, 3 assists. That top line, just beautiful. But they still lost. So I should give credit to Minnesota here. There's a guy in Minnesota, Connor Dewar. He scores every once in a while from the 4th line. Just throw that name out there. Actually, while I'm mentioning Minnesota, let me jump to the streak section super quick. I was going to bring up Joel Eriksson Ek, who scored today. I think someone asked about him on our Discord, but I don't have it written down here. But he's someone that I feel like, Brian, we haven't talked about like all season, and he's having like such a good season. And I feel like it's kind of criminal that we just like haven't, like he has with his goal today, Joel Eriksson Ek is up to 22 points in 24 games. He's been on the top power play all season. I feel like we've talked about like Kalen Addison on the top power play a million times. We've talked about Sam Steele playing on the top line a few times now. We don't even mention this guy on the top power play that's actually producing season long. So I don't know. Just wanted to give him some, I don't know, maybe now this is your opportunity to throw some cold water on him and say that he's not going to keep it up. But I just wanted to bring him up and be like, kudos to anyone who drafted Joel Eriksson Ek. He probably got him pretty late. And he's been a real, so especially if your league counts hits, by the way, he's also great for hits. If your league counts face-offs, I don't even know how high he'd be ranked. Probably very high. He's also taking a lot of shots. He's doing everything. He's like a Boone Jenner.
Yeah, that's a really great comparison for Eck. Give him all the credit, especially this week. He dropped so many couple points against me, kept me from ending Nathan's undefeated season in Tier 3 Binghamton. He's 8-0 now. I'm now on a 3-week losing streak at 4-4. So I definitely noticed how great a week Joel Eriksson Ek was getting. He also, picks up a couple of hits per game, which is nice. There's another thing he does. And I agree. Ek deserves love. After all the nobodies, like think of all the guys we've talked about on Minnesota this year as we try and jump on whoever's playing with Kaprizov, or like the next big thing. Is it Sam Steele? Is it Freddie Gaudreau? Kalen Addison? Meanwhile, Ek is quietly delivering for all who drafted him. I guess I should be saying Eriksson Ek when I say his name. One reason why he's doing so well is he's participating on about 30% more goals at 5-on-5 than he usually does. So he'll regress a bit, but I think we're seeing Ek really emerge, or Eriksson Ek really emerge as somebody who might be like a Jenner reliable type. This is Eriksson Ek's 6th full season in the NHL. His previous best was a 53-point pace last year. It's looking like a pretty good bet for at least a 60-point season, possibly 65, making him the second best EK in the league.
Okay, there you go. He's doing really well. Yeah, Erik Karlsson also doing very well. By the way, Brian, just to throw it out there because no one cares, but I still just want to say it. I'm in a very tight matchup in the Bubupful. I'm playing against Ben from Short Shifts, and I'm currently winning 226.4 to 225.2. And I've got Erik Karlsson and Patrick Kane, and he's got Peugeot, Barabanov, Parise, and Beauvillier with like a period left to go in their respective games. So I might be a little bit distracted for the second half of this part 2 of this episode. So just a little warning there. Very interesting. So everyone, please cheer for Erik Karlsson, Patrick Kane to have a big third period today on Sunday. By the way, I wanted to mention, since we were on Toronto, that this Mitch Marner guy, who's on a great hot streak, you probably want to know who's playing with him. It's not been Austin Matthews. I think we mentioned that last week. It's been John Tavares as the centerman, and Nick Robertson has been playing on the wing with Marner and Tavares, and he didn't get any points in the last couple of games, but he did take 3 shots in each of the last couple of games. So if you're looking for a deep stream, like Nick Robertson in a really good spot. I know we've said this before, and he didn't really do anything, so you're probably just thinking like, forget it. He's a guy that Brian just said before about like a Seth Jarvis. At one point we were interested, and then he let us down. It's always possible that Nick Robertson, a high pedigree guy in a good spot, could actually start going off at some point. So just wanted to throw him out there.
Yeah, and the player Robertson has bumped is Alex Kerfoot, who I think has purpose on the third line, maybe more so than he does on the second line. So we'll see if Nick Robertson can hold this time around. He hasn't before, and I'm not sure if anything has changed. He doesn't seem to be loved by the coaching staff and someone who they really want to put in a position to succeed. So we'll wait. It feels to me almost like a Puljujarvi situation last year, where like he was the obvious choice to play with McDavid, but they seem to be grudgingly put him there, and he also wasn't ever really to capitalize on a regular basis. So keep an eye, at least on Nick Robertson. He's in a great spot, and like Jarvis, is worth having a look at. I think for this week, I would rather take a shot on Robertson playing more than 2 games than Seth Jarvis.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's go to a couple more outjuries here before we end part 1 of this part 2. I guess we need to come up with different words for like part 1 and part 2 of the episode and of the part of the episode. You know what I mean? So someone help me out with this. But anyways, I want to go to Tampa Bay next. Anthony Cirelli returned for this game versus Toronto that happened on Saturday, and he had a great game. 2 assists in only 12 minutes and 51 seconds of ice time. Normally Cirelli plays more than that, so I'd imagine maybe he was getting eased in, or maybe not, because he was on the third line with Nemesnikov and then sometimes Pat Maroon or sometimes Ross Colton. By the way, one of those assists came on the OT winner that Alex Killorn scored. I assume that we're not going to be that interested in Anthony Cirelli if he's going to stick on line 3 and I guess power play 2. But he's also someone that could easily get bumped up the lineup, as we've seen in the past. So he's definitely someone I'll be watching closely. Brian, any thoughts on Anthony Cirelli?
Nope.
Okay. And then the other big news in Tampa is in that game, Victor Hedman. We're just going to have to talk about Victor Hedman every episode for the rest of the season, right? So he jumped back on the top power play. We had a clip tweeted at us from, I believe it was Michael, right? The same guy who you got your Hedman information from last week, who said, wasn't it like, Brian, you were saying on the show how you were so interested in this information about how like Hedman, it's like Sergachev's spot to lose at this point. You know what I'm talking about?
I remember.
Yeah. Okay. So Michael now wrote to us today to give us a link to a clip from the game where Sergachev was, taking the puck out of the zone on the power play. And then he just like gave it away basically to Mitch Marner, and Marner scored a goal. And then after that, Victor Hedman took over as the defenseman on PP1. So it turned out it wasn't maybe the offense that cost Sergachev, but the defense with the man advantage. And so now obviously who knows if that's going to last going into the next game. But imagine if after all of this, like one bad play, and now we're back to Hedman on the top power play. I should point out that Hedman didn't get a point, and Sergachev did get a point in that game versus Toronto. But I guess, yeah, we're going to have to watch game day tweets at this point and see if Tampa decides to go. I guess one thing with the whole story is like at the end of the day, he is Victor Hedman, right? And Tampa Bay has won like cups on his back, and maybe it's like at some point they just have to do the respect thing and like give him his job back. I wonder if that like plays into it at all.
At the same time, I feel like it would be, I agree with you, Elon, but it feels like it would be disrespectful to like yank the job from Sergachev because of one giveaway. It's like, hey, you were on borrowed time. We were waiting for you to slip up. Get out of here. Make room for Hedman. Like if that's the plan, I feel like give Sergachev one last game, scheduled it. That's how I would do it. But maybe I'm not an NHL coach. I'm not cutthroat. So
yeah. Well, anyway, all that to say, if someone's not like watching like the third period power play deployment, maybe now's a good time to try to trade for Victor Hedman because he's still got no points. He's still on like this big cold streak. So I'm not saying anything, like it could easily just be Sergachev continuing what he's been doing all season. That was just like a 1.5 game punishment or something. But if you could get Hedman for peanuts, which I believe Ben made a reference to in a recent episode, and it was like a Peanuts reference, like Charlie Brown and those people. By the way, there's a fun Peanuts reference on the last episode of Survivor. So I've got Peanuts, the cartoon, coming at me from all angles in my life lately. Anyway, maybe see what you can get Hedman for. Who I said someone else that people should try to trade for. Oh yeah, that goalie who's in Demko. Trade for Demko and trade for Hedman if you get them super cheap. That's my advice for this episode. One more outro, Brian. Okay, Travis Konechny. Back for Philly. He's scored in both games since his return versus Tampa and New Jersey. Only 58% rostered on Yahoo. Jeez, like, what does Travis Konechny have to do? I guess he was injured, so maybe he was being dropped in leagues where people didn't have room in their IRs. But get him back on your team. Let's go. 21 points in 19 games now. To me, he's like the best player on the team. I know Kevin Hayes also sure, but it's like Konechny is the straw that stirs the drink over in Philly when he is on the roster. So 58% rostered. I think that's going to go up to like 75 before too long. 80, I don't know how many inactive leagues there are on Yahoo where he'll just never get added, but he's great. Okay. And by the way, I should mention the latest lines, which could easily change again because Philly's lost the last couple of games, but Noah Cates has been the third stringer, I guess, the third wheel on the line with Konechny and Kevin Hayes lately. And Noah Cates has been on the top power play. Brian, who is Noah Cates? And should we be interested in him?
Noah Cates is 23 years old in his first full pro season. He had 9 points, 5 goals and 4 assists in 16 games with the Flyers last year after he finished his college career with the North Collegiate Hockey. I messed up that acronym. The NCHC, University of Minnesota Duluth, 5th round pick, 137th overall in 2017 was when the Flyers selected Noah Cates, which was a really boring draft. Actually, I was looking for other relevant players. Batherson was picked 15 spots ahead of Cates at 122. Really no one else of value, like some defensemen who do boring stuff, like decent top 4 guys, but no one else of fantasy value beyond the first picks of the 3rd round with Fabian Zetterlund and Morgan Geekie going early in the 3rd. But I guess there's still time for some players to emerge like Noah Cates, but I'm not sure the sky is the limit for him. He comes with some measured regarding upside, but if I'm remembering Charlie O'Connor's Beats interview from the summer, he was like, yeah, he has some upside, but doesn't quite have it all together as someone we know is going to be like consistently successful in the league. But it's not so surprising to see him get at least a look on the top line before Cam Atkinson gets outjured. And I hope we'll be talking about him next week.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be a reason maybe to not be too excited about Noah Cates. Philly does play 4 games next week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So, maybe if you get an update saying that Atkinson's not coming back till next weekend, then Cates could be a decent stream there on Line 1 Power Play 1 if he sticks. All right, Brian, we still have some streaks to get to. A lot of fun, hot and cold streaks. And we're going to get to all that in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, Brian, we are back for the second half of part 2 here, where we're finally going to get to some hot and cold streaks. Not that we've not talked about like a ton of them as we've been going through the injuries and outjuries, but now we're officially in only streaks. So no more players who've been out of their team's rosters for a while. It's guys that have been around and have been doing things or not doing things. We have to go to Buffalo. Norm literally just wrote in the chat, speaking of players we should care about, do we care about Jack Quinn? 8 points in his last 8 games, but doesn't seem like his deployment is phenomenal and ice time isn't there. Okay, I will maybe argue and say, I think you may want to say that his deployment is phenomenal because he's playing with Dylan Cousins, and anyone playing with Dylan Cousins is in a really good spot right now because Cousins is on fire. 4 goals and 2 assists in his last 3 games. And I wrote that before Buffalo played today, and Buffalo is still playing today. It's 4-2 right now. And I'm guessing, another 2 assists for Dylan Cousins, a goal from Jack Quinn, which I assume it was a power play goal from power play 2. Or maybe power play 1. I don't even know because Darlene has an assist here too. So I don't even know what's going on. But Jack Quinn had a goal today. Cousins, I'm seeing, like I said, 2 assists. There's another guy on that line who's JJ Paterka, who also scored a goal today, assisted by Dylan Cousins. So I feel like that second Buffalo all of a sudden has 2 very excited lines. We of course have the Skinner and Thompson and Tuck line, but I'm almost, no, I won't say as interested in, but I think at this point we're getting to a point where you have to be very interested in anyone on this second line as well. 3 very exciting young players. Brian, what do you think? Let's say you've got Dylan Cousins in free agency, and let's say you've got like Teuvo Teravainen on your team. Oh, I should mention, by the way, Cousins is on the top power play now. That's very exciting, right? So is it an easy drop Teravainen for Dylan Cousins?
Yeah, I was going to jump in before you added that extra data point about Cousins. But yes, do that now. Pause the pod, drop Teravainen for Dylan Cousins. I really like coming into tonight. 5 goals on his last 18 shots, which would make me say, oh yeah, he's shooting like over 25%. Can't hold this, but the assists have been coming in pretty steadily too for Dylan Cousins, and everything is up for him across the board. And just like on its face, 18 shots over 5 games, that is pretty great. And again, that's coming into tonight's action.
Yeah, by Brian, 6 shots today.
Amazing. Dylan, I love Dylan Cousins. Everything is up. His time on ice, his deployment, his scoring, his shooting, his expected goals. Remember, this is a 7th overall pick in 2019. He's 21 years old, from Whitehorse, by the way, Yukon territory. Cousins looks really good, and I want him. And one of the things you said about him was this second line is use the word exciting. And that's it. I'm excited by Cousins, Quinn, and Paterka. This is a fun second line. Think about the guys who are no longer here. They're so boring. Victor Olofsson, Casey Middlestat, like get them out of the top 6. It's about time that we had some excitement in there. And I am pretty excited to see maybe a new line 2 torch passed in Buffalo to Cousins, Quinn, and Paterka.
Yeah, and so as far as Quinn and Paterka, they're not on the top power play, so not as exciting as Cousins. But yeah, definitely. Like next week, Buffalo plays Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. So I think if come Wednesday morning, Quinn and Paterka are still out, like Cousins, you have to pause the pod, like Brian said, get him ASAP. Come Wednesday morning, if Quinn and Paterka are still out there, I think they're like amazing streams to get 3 games in 4 days. And then you reassess after Saturday if they do well enough to hold them. But like Brian said, very exciting line. Okay, next up, let's go to Calgary. Dan Vladar. I think at one point you told me it was Vladash. And then I think I said Vladash, and then people were flaming me on our Discord saying, why are you calling him that? So I don't know. But this guy, Dan, is I think stealing the net in Calgary, or at least making a claim to steal the net in Calgary. Big win versus Washington yesterday. Vladar/Vladash stopped 27 of 29 in the win. He's now played 4 of the last 6 games. Meanwhile, Jacob Markstrom, not good so far this season. Kind of like Demko-esque. He has an .889 save percentage in 17 games this season. He let in 17 goals on 19 shots in the loss to Montreal on Thursday, which obviously is why Vladash got the start on Saturday. I'm looking forward for you coming in and correcting me.
We can say Vladar is. I'm reading the pronunciation guide from last year. We were told once upon a time that because he's Czech, like remember there was Sten Neskash on the Sens, Neckar. And so I think maybe back home it's Vladash, but maybe it's just been Anglo-Americanized.
All right, so we're gonna go Vladar from now
It's
on.
Vladar.
Okay, Vladar.
Well, I'm seeing, yeah, that's how I'm reading the pronunciation.
So it's like batter.
Dan
Vladar.
Vladar.
Okay,
Yeah.
Dan Vladar, we got it. Well, we're gonna have to get it right because I'm saying, it looks like he might be becoming a significant threat to Markstrom for games. He's having a much better season so far, though. Of course, he's only played like a third of the games, but yeah, really good. So, Brian, what do you think? Is it time for people to at least speculatively add Vladar to their fantasy teams? Calgary plays 4 times next week. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets at least 2, maybe even 3 of the games. So I think at the very least, grab Vladar now if he's available for next week, and then we can see. But yeah, Markstrom is really not doing so great. And I guess the flip side of the question is, how nervous are you as a Markstrom manager?
Yeah, I'm concerned, and I wouldn't have expected to be concerned. I have Markstrom in this volume league I was talking about where I have Matt Murray, and like a volume starter on a good team is gold. Like it's a ticket to contention. You need one. And now I'm really upset about what's happening to Jacob Markstrom, who is being outplayed by Dan Vladar. Once upon a time, remember Vladar was going head to head with Jeremy Swayman for who would be the next Bruins goalie after Tuukka Rask before Allmark was in the picture. They chose Swayman, but Vladar's looking like he was up for the challenge, at least at this point. And Calgary's just a game above 500. They're 5th in the division. If the playoffs started today, the Flames would not make the playoffs. So there's no time to spare. I could see them going with Vladar, like you said, at least twice next week, at least until he falters or Markstrom proves capable. Like both haven't happened for a little while now. And it's really frustrating for me. And like, I think most fantasy managers to see another volume starter who we thought we could rely on biting the dust here. You know, we lost Demko, we've lost Markstrom, Merzlikins, Fleury, Bobrovsky, Binnington, Campbell. Like I could go on. These are all the guys that we thought were volume goalies coming into the year who are no longer volume goalies. What a crazy year. I mean, it's in a month, maybe things will have restored to the course we would have expected in Calgary, but at least for the short term, if you have Markstrom, you're going to need to look at how to make up those starts some other way.
Yeah, one way is to get Vladar. And then you could just be guaranteed. And then you could just kind of hope that for maybe then you hope Markstrom gets injured like Demko did, which isn't nice. But then you could just get the starter because, yeah, Vladar's having a really big season. I guess I'll also bring up a cold streak in Calgary while we're here, which I could be bringing up a lot of people. But I'll bring up Nazem Kadri. He had an assist yesterday versus Washington, but that was his first point in 8 games. What the heck happened to Nazem Kadri? Like he was having such amazing, like I remember at the start of the season, we were talking about how Huberdeau was cold and like Lindholm, and we were like, the only person doing anything is Nazem Kadri. Now it's like flipped. Like, I don't know. Is it like a buy low time? Are you going to tell us that like Kadri is really good and now's a great opportunity? Or is it like snoozer time? Maybe we need to be really worried that just like Kadri had that one really awesome year in Colorado. And now he's doing what he did for the rest of his career, which is being like rosterable, but not amazing.
More likely to me that this is a buy low moment for Nazem Kadri as opposed to a snoozer moment for him. And all of Calgary, by the way, there was so much fantasy value to be found there last year, like following up on our Markstrom talk. There's so little fantasy value to be found there this year. And Kadri himself, low participant at 5-on-5 in goals that are being scored, and he's in on about 20% fewer goals than he normally is. I think that'll regress. And one big problem for Kadri and really everyone in Calgary is their power play is not good. And has not been performing well because of that. They are just 2 for 21 in power play opportunities in their last 7 games, which is about the same length as Kadri's dry spell. Over the last 18 games, the Flames have scored just 7 power play goals in 54 opportunities. That goes back to late October. Like I said, the power play hasn't been great. Like if I'm looking at the stats that I like to measure power plays by, they're in the bottom third of the league, but this is still worse than even that would deserve, the drought that this power play is on. So I think you just wait, because all the other indicators for Kadri are there. Wait out for his participation to increase as we'd expect by regression, and for the power play goals to be coming a little more regularly for the Flames. And I think he'll start performing closer to what you would have expected when you drafted him.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. If you have Nazem Kadri on your team, I actually added him in my dynasty league where like I just decided to take. He was doing so well at the start of the year. He was in free agency because of his contract, right? Like 7 years, I think. What is it? 7 million a year, some high number for a long time. He was doing so well. I just figured like I cleared space. I was actually pretty happy with it. I traded away Cal Peterson and John Klingberg to make the space, and goalies are like impossible to find. And then when Cal Peterson obviously got sent down, I felt really smart. But then when I look at like how I filled the space with Nelson Kadri's not doing anything, that's not making me feel great. So hopefully what you said is correct, Brian, for this year and the next few years would be nice. Let's go to Ottawa now. We got another hot goalie to discuss in Cam Talbot. 4 straight quality starts. To be fair, Anton Forsberg did play well versus the Sharks yesterday when he played the second half of the back-to-back. But I wonder if it's like too little, too late. Like it seems like Talbot is emerging as the starter. Though I guess this could be a Matt Murray Samsonov situation where like obviously Forsberg was injured. So that's why Talbot was getting all the games. But I just wonder, Brian, I know I brought him up before and you've always said like you don't have much faith in Talbot. You think it's 50-50, but I don't know. When I look at it, I see like Cam Talbot emerging as a starting goalie here, just like he was like last year, like, I mean, he's been a starting goalie in the league. And I don't know. I think that maybe it's looking like he might be in Ottawa, but I'm ready for you to tell me that you went to that game yesterday versus San Jose and what you saw from Anton Forsberg was the stuff of not a backup goalie.
Yeah, Forsberg looked really good. And I know Talbot has looked good lately. Like I'll be honest, Elon, I'm kind of bored of this conversation.
All right, next.
I know you think Talbot's emerging, but I'll always say anytime you think Talbot's emerging, he's not far from submerging. And okay. Forsberg looked good enough to be able to give the Sens another option. I mean, I don't know if he can do that night in, night out, but he looked really good against San Jose, made some pretty key saves. And I like that you're always thinking about this. It's good to know who has the upper hand in this, but on the whole, I don't think anyone's on their way to a workhorse workload.
Yeah, I don't think that Forsberg's ever had the upper hand. It's always either been 50-50 or Talbot is ahead. So I think moving forward, I would take Talbot if I was picking between the two for what it's worth. We have actually an interesting question from Ashley here in the chat. Vladar or Skinner? I'm assuming like a Stuart Skinner over in Edmonton. We haven't checked in on them in a while. Skinner, I imagine, is still playing all the games, and Jack Campbell's still not doing much. I believe I haven't heard to the contrary. Let's see. Edmonton did have that loss to
Skinner.
Chicago.
He's honestly his last 4 starts have been kind of bad. 821 against New Jersey, 893 and a win against Florida, 840 and a win against Chicago, 909 and a win against Montreal. So he's won despite playing pretty subpar, but he's still starting. I still don't see like Jack Campbell hasn't stepped up and been like, I can do this job. So until that happens, I feel like Skinner is the Talbot, Elon, in the situation to put the analogy there, except I think he's further ahead of Campbell than Talbot is ahead of Forsberg.
Yeah, I think Forsberg is better than Campbell, at least from what we've seen this season. So I think it makes sense. Yeah. I would take Skinner over Vladar just because Markstrom should be better, but you never know. He might just have lost it. Like remember, Corey Schneider, like 1 year all of a sudden was bad. And I was like, well, I guess there
were injuries involved. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I don't recall an injury to Markstrom.
No, I guess not. But he's not a young guy. Well, actually, he's only 32. He's a lot younger than I think I realized. Okay. I don't know what's going on with Jacob Markstrom. Hopefully he bounces back. But okay, let's move on to another guy in Ottawa who I yelled out when you said you're bored of this convo. Brady Tkachuk. No fantasy advice to give, but holy cow. I was talking about how Jason Robertson is shooting up the rankings. Brady Tkachuk also, right? Especially in your bangers leagues. He has 5 goals in his last 5 games. Brady is now up to 12 goals and 29 points on the season in 24 games. That's a pace of 41 goals and 99 points. Brian, I remember we did a hot takeoff a couple of years ago, and you predicted that Brady Tkachuk was going to be a 40-goal guy, and it was like a hot take at the time, and you turned out to be wrong that year, but now it's looking like an obvious take. Like it looks like at least 40-goal guy, if not higher, 100-point guy. He's also averaging 4.6 shots per game, which is among the best in the league. He's also averaging like almost 3 hits per game. I don't have a question for you. Just saying, he's really good in a bangers league. He must be amongst the top.
Yeah, as he has been, even without the goals coming as much as they've been coming for him this year, with a goal every other game. And like, I look straight to his shooting percentage, and I don't see a problem with what he's doing. I really don't. So
you're going to score a lot of goals. You're going to average almost a goal a game if you shoot this much.
Yeah. And even on the power play, like he's only shooting like 15%, which is higher than ever. but on both the power play and at 5-on-5, he's still underperforming compared to what his expected goals rates are. So there's a lot of reason to think that Brady can keep up exactly what he's doing for goal scoring. For the assist getting, I'm not 100% sure. He's been in on 95% of the goals scored while he's on the ice, which is great. Like, he is in every single play at 5-on-5. He's instrumental to making things happen. And I love that he's upped his own shot counts too, but that is, so maybe rebounds are a big part of that. His increased involvement at 5-on-5 is generally around 70% instead of 95. That's one of the highest points participation rates of anybody. It might be the highest if I brought it up. If anyone in the league who's been on the ice for several goals, and keep in mind, Elon, he's doing all of this with a little less ice time than he's used to seeing too, right? Because the Sens were at least at one point spreading out their top six a little more. I think they've sort of been leaning on the Brady line a little bit more recently, but I don't have a bad thing to say or any cold water to throw on Tkachuk. Well, I guess I threw a little bit on it, but he's having an incredible season, and the goals are fun to watch.
Yeah. So I still remember when people were bagging on the Sens for picking him instead of whoever they else.
Oh, me too. Except Philip Zadina. I remember I was listening. I probably shared this story before. I was walking and I was listening to the draft on the radio. I guess I had on my device or whatever. And I was like, oh, of course they draft the son of a former NHLer who plays, hard-nosed hockey over the skilled European. And we were all wrong. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Way to go, Pierre Dorion.
What year was that? 2017? I don't even know. What year was Brady drafted?
Do you want me to look it up?
Okay, I'll look it up.
I assumed you were looking it up as you asked.
Brady Tkachuk draft. Was that the year that Dahlin? Oh yeah, okay. I'm just gonna bring it up. Yeah, if you look at it now, Dahlin went first in that 2018 draft. So that was a good pick. Svechnikov went second, then Kotkaniemi, then Brady Tkachuk, then Barrett Hayton, Philip Zadina, then Quinn Hughes. There's a lot of hits and a lot of misses here. But I think maybe Brady Tkachuk is arguably the guy who would go second overall or even maybe first overall if they were to redraft right now, depending on if you want a D or a forward.
Yeah, totally. I would be, that's a really great question in a redraft. So it's basically Tkachuk versus Svechnikov, Dahlin, and Quinn Hughes. Depends what you need, but if you're looking for a cornerstone to build your team around, Brady seems like maybe just because exposure bias, I've seen him a lot, but I'd like him.
Yeah, and then you know what? Who else was a good pick? The Leafs took Sean Durzi in the second round, but then they traded him, so they don't get to keep him. I guess in the trade for Jake Muzzin. Anyway, all right, let's get back to this here. Andy S. had a question for us. He wanted us to talk about what's going on in Seattle. Who's worth holding on to is basically his question. He wrote, I held on to McCann and dropped Beniers earlier in the year, but Beniers really seems to be coming into his own right now. I'd say at this point, for sure, yes, to both of those two, I think, right? McCann has 4 goals in his last 4 games. Beniers, like you said, Brian, is on fire right now. He has 5 goals and 12 points in his last 7 games. I think Beniers is maybe number 1, if not Burakovsky, who we talked about last week, who's still at around a point per game. I'd say Burakovsky and Beniers are tier 1. And then probably you've got McCann and then also Jordan Eberle. I think I'd call them tier 2 over in Seattle. Eberle's also at around a point per game. I think, I'd say those 4 are the for sure hold-ons. McCann, Beniers, Eberle, Burakovsky, not in that order.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see why give up on them now. Things are going well in Seattle, except there is one guy that you should drop. Go out of your way to drop if you still are holding on to Oliver Bjorkstrand.
Oh,
you're snoozing. It's sad. 27-year-old Dane averaged nearly 4 shots per game over his first 12 games. So really promising start in Seattle for Seattle's offseason acquisition in Bjorkstrand. Too bad for Bjorkstrand that he only scored once on his first 45 shots this season. That's a 2.2 shooting percentage, but the promise was there. Unfortunately, since then, Bjorkstrand has taken just 17 shots over his last 12 games and is basically 1 shot per game max in the most recent week or two. And Bjorkstrand has also seen a 3-minute per night drop in his time on ice. So this is just a big blah on Bjorkstrand's.
here.
Like this is another promising start and another promising moment for Bjorkstrand and another thud. And he's 27. I don't know. I can get up for another a year of hope for Bjorkstrand. This feels like it could be the end of the road.
Yeah, maybe I'd prefer Alex Wenberg at this point. I don't know.
I'd prefer anyone who's producing.
Yeah. Jaden Schwartz, I guess, is a guy you could consider if we're talking forward. So he hasn't been that great.
Except
I guess
Schwartz is a frequenter of the gym in our Discord. So we have a channel that shouts out anybody who has a cardio, quote unquote, cardio session when they play, which means you're rostered in the cupful and you do nothing for the whole game. Like you don't hit the cupful score sheets, no shots, no hits, no blocks, no goals, no assists, nothing. And Schwartz, we're going to name the channel after him if this keeps up.
He does a lot. Yeah, he does it a lot. Today in this matchup versus Ben that I was talking about, I streamed in Wyatt Johnston from Dallas. He gave me a cardio game. And Cam Fowler had a cardio game after we've been talking about how good he's been. So, and I'm losing now. Stupid Zach Parise scored a goal.
Of course he did.
Well, how is Zach Parise still? Anyway, whatever. Okay.
How was that? What was the end of that sentence? Because there's a lot like, how is Zach Parise still in the league? How is Zach Parise still rostered?
Yeah, on someone's fantasy roster, but he deserves it. Like he's been having a pretty good year. So I can't blame Ben for having him. Anyway, I should also mention, by the way, there's some players on Seattle you might want to also hold on to on defense, right? Justin Schultz, like Ben and those talked about how he's been on a good run. Vince Dunn is always interesting. Adam Larson, if you're in a bangers league, he's also like taking a decent number of shots. So Seattle's a good team. They just need the goaltending. Philip, Martin Jones really has blown it since Grubauer came back, and then Grubauer had that one good game, and now, or even two, but now he had a bad game. So that's a shame. That's too bad. They shouldn't have gotten rid of Hellberg. I think he would have been the answer for them.
Hellberg is being renamed the answer.
I'm just waiting for him to get another game. Let's go. But okay. Next, I wanted to go to Vegas to talk about Chandler Stevenson. I actually wrote him down as someone to bring up, but then I didn't actually get a chance to look up if he's still on a cold streak. But I know he's been centering Stone and Eichel for a while now, and he had a stretch where he wasn't doing anything. But look at that. He has assists in his last two games. I was going to say, I promised Brian that I was going to say to hold on while he's still got line one, power play one deployment, not to worry about it.
Yeah, me too. That line is crazy good. He wasn't going to stay down for long.
Okay, so that is an easy one. Then we have Bouchard over in Edmonton. Looks like he's been getting a lot of power play assists lately, which makes me wonder. I still see in the last game, Barry had more power play time than Bouchard, but kind of looks like they're just switching back and forth. Maybe it's like the coach just goes on a whim. I remember there was one team that said that they were putting out, like they had two defensemen that were going on the top power play. And it was like whichever defenseman had been on the ice the longest since his last shift was the one that went out to start the power play. So I wonder if it's almost getting to a situation like that. Maybe our Edmonton fan listeners can let us know. But anyways, Bouchard now up to 5 points in his last 5 games. So if you held on all season, now you're starting to benefit. He still hasn't like totally claimed power play one, it doesn't seem, but it's getting close, right? Like maybe he will have by the next time we talk about him.
He's rattling the cage. I feel like that's all I can say, right? Like he's making noise, he's making a case. That's it. Like it's good to see, right? So if he's been dropped or someone's lost patience with him, get him on your watch list, or maybe now's a chance for you to kick tires just in case this is the moment where things start to go well for. I mean, we said, but coming into the season, even off power play one, he should be more rosterable this year than he has been. So there's at least that. But yeah, wouldn't it be great if he took over? And I think that this like shift story about whoever's been out before the power play, that's still progress compared to where Bouchard was for most of the season so far.
Yeah. By the way, Shams is pointing out that Eichel is a game time decision for the next game versus. Oh, wait, sorry. No, that's not what I wanted to say. By the way, Shams is pointing out that it was the Vegas top power play. They were like swapping Pietrangelo and Theodore depending on who was the fresher defenseman. Thanks for that, Shams. Shams is great. He's also
I think there was something though about Bouchard and Barry. Like we were talking about why Bouchard was out on the top unit in our server.
So go hang out on our Discord. You get all the information that sometimes even Brian and I can't remember. Also, Shams is pointing out that Eichel is a game time decision for the next game for Vegas. So not a long-term thing, nothing to worry about, but good to throw it out there. Make sure you get him in your IR, or actually then you have to like set your alarm for like 6:59 or whatever, a minute before the game. Make sure you either get him in or get him out. depending, don't miss the last minute news. Who else? Brian, I guess that's it for the streaks pretty much I wanted to bring up. I guess we could talk about the Winnipeg guys. Like Ben and Lewis already talked about them, and they just continue to be hot. I can't believe Blake Wheeler is on this run after I after I dumped him. Now he has like 10 points in his last 5 games.
Yeah.
We
at least I got Petrie back though.
That was really good. Okay.
Yeah.
Cole Perfetti, really like he was cold at one point. I had him on my couple team at one point early on in the year. Then he went super cold. I dropped him like everyone did. It's not as if like I dropped him and someone paid like a lot of fab to add him. Like he hung out in free agency for a bit and eventually he got added, probably even just for a good schedule. Now he's on a 5-game point streak. So that, remember Brian, we were talking about Scheifele and you were saying how this is like bad news for him that he's swapped with Dubois and he's now centering Wheeler and Perfetti. Like, well, now that's the second line. Like, I don't think so. I think that this Wheeler, Scheifele and Perfetti line is line 1 and Dubois and Kyle Connor is line 2. At least
it depends if you define it by the wingers or the center. Maybe it's a 1A, 1B situation. I would still rather Scheifele be playing with Connor.
Yeah, in terms of ice time, it's been line 1, the Scheifele, Wheeler, and Perfetti line, it seems. And this guy, remember I was like really shocked that Saku Manalainen had scored a goal for Winnipeg in that game where I really needed Scheifele to score. I think that was on a previous episode. Anyway, I ended up picking Manalainen. You said it was Manalainen, but there's no I in here. So I'm going to say Manalainen. And anyways, he just had a goal and an assist today. And I actually picked him today in Tim Horton's goal scoring prediction game. You know, that app where you get to predict who's going to score?
Free advertising.
Box 3. Normally that's like all defensemen and then like some really like line 4 forwards. And I remembered that episode where I was like shocked this guy was scoring goals over Scheifele and he scored for me. So maybe he is somebody. I don't know. Saku, Maen, Manalainen.
Minalainen. I'm looking up Minalainen. Saku Minalainen.
He's good.
Yeah.
Brian, I guess is it. Oh, we talked about Soderblom before. We could give an update now that we're in the 3rd period and the Islanders are up 3-0 against Chicago. So this is the problem with Soderblom, right? Is that Chicago's not very good. So he's letting 3 goals on 31 shots. He's probably going to end the game with like a higher than 900 save percentage, but probably a loss. So I'm not that interested in him unless your league is like rates. If you need wins, more of a reason to go for Spencer Martin, which I think we said back in part 1, right? But with that, Brian, do you have any final players you want us to talk about before we get out of here and start enjoying another week of fantasy action?
I think we're good to go, Elon. That was good. If we missed anybody, tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson, or better yet, join our Discord community, and you can ask, you can request for us to talk about players on the show. So if there's anyone we missed, let us know that you think we should have had on our radars, but also join our community and let us know when we put the call out to our patrons.
Well, yeah, you could join and you could go to the Short Shifts channel and request for Ben and Lewis to talk about someone, or you could go to the KK episode discussion channel and request for us. We're always putting call outs. We always want to make sure we cover people. I could even look. Yeah, we covered everything. I'm seeing Daniel. Oh, what time is the show? Is the latest? Well, Daniel, I got bad news for you. Show just ended. But as for everyone else, thank you so much for listening. Like Brian said, we'd love your support as a patron. KeepingKarlsson.com/patron. That helps, power the episodes. We'd love for you to give us a review on iTunes. This is the part where I ask you we've just given you 2 hours, right? So now we're going to ask you for just a couple things, right? So the review on iTunes or Spotify or whatever, that really helps us out. The support as a patron, you could follow us on Twitter. That doesn't really help us, to be honest, but still kind of cool to see how many Twitter followers you have. And you could also give us advice questions. We'd love to just interact with people. I don't know. I don't have anything else to ask for. So I guess I'll just throw to you, Brian, and tell everyone that I'm about to cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by our patrons. No, it was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons.
Get it right.
Yeah. And Elon said, you power our episodes and also our egos by becoming a patron of the show. We really appreciate if we bring you value. We'll offer you more value in return for your value. But thanks to our super supporters who are offering so much value to their contributions to the show, outsized, disproportionate value. Thank you, Andrea, Tyler, Aaron, Tom, Ryan, Derek, David, Rob, Ricard. Thanks a lot for Ricard's been with us a long time, and he just became a super supporter. So thanks, Ricard. That's really kind of you. And of course, Patty. This episode, we should also mention, we should thank Kevin and our team of Cupful co-commissions who are just crushing it, replacing managers who need a break or have gone inactive or aren't able to manage their teams anymore. Thanks to you all for keeping an eye out and keeping this the most active fantasy league with 600 people on it in the world. Thanks to Elon and Shams for all the amazing work you're doing, keeping us informed via GameDayTweets.com. Listen to Short Shifts twice a week and follow Ben and Lewis at Short Shifts KK. Listen to Stream Scheme once a week or 7 times a week or 14. Limitless, really.
Yeah, but if you're going to listen to it 7 times a week, please download it from 7 different devices.
Yes.
We want credit for all 7.
That would be really great. Follow Dave at NHL Stream Scheme to do that. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cat Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, which is, by the way, always where I found the information about Jean-Luc Foudy's family. Great spot to look for family connections in the NHL. And Yahoo!
Great job as always, Brian. Thank you for bringing us all the family connections you found on Elite Prospects and all the knowledge every single week, Brian. It's such a pleasure to be able to podcast with you. But with that, everyone, hope you have a great week in fantasy. Good luck with your streaming. Look at the schedules. Some really good schedules and really bad schedules next week. So a really good opportunity to get an advantage over your opponents. And again, you can listen to the stream scheme, which already dropped to tell you which teams you need to be targeting. But Brian, I guess while we're playing fantasy, having a good time, getting ready for the holidays, is there anything else we should be doing while we wait for each Keeping Karlsson episode to drop every couple days?
I know you're all very busy people, but you can do this without really adding anything to your plate. And all it is about being welcome and inclusive and making sure that fantasy hockey is something that can be for everyone.
Oh, you changed up. Is this an official slogan change or just one time for fun?
I was just expanding on it a little bit.
Make it that fantasy hockey is so. And remember, fantasy hockey is something that, what was it again? Is something that can be done by.
Are you serious?
It was such a good, like, catchy thing. And
be welcoming and inclusive so that fantasy hockey is something that can be for everyone.
Something that can be for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It should be for everyone.
No, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
No question about that. I feel like
stop gatekeeping.
I'm saying it could be said in fewer words. I like the fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Oh, okay.
You can put that on a t-shirt.
Do all that you can to make sure that fantasy hockey.
You don't need to re-record it. I'll use what you put. This is just for us.
Okay.
Anyways, this is a blast. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm so happy. I just want to say about the people who joined us in the chat, like, because we changed it to be only the patrons. I already talked about this before, but it was just so fun. And like, it feels extra fun knowing that we're hanging out, with the patrons. Like our supporters, we hang out with them. And like I know everyone here are the people that are like in our crew. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining. We had a really good time. Brian, I guess that's it. Have a good night. See you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for being here.